Sometimes spaghetti likes to be alone.
It sounds like spaghetti needs a good lawyer. Ed? Yes!
All right, all right, all right.
When did Donnie and Marie start playing the violin? Am I right? Nero. Now that's your guy if you want a mean fiddle. That dude knows how to party. Look, this whole social distancing thing, it's kind of cramping my style. You seem like a nice kid. They're already in your head. Don't let them take your freedom, brother.
Marty, if only we had a properly calibrated flux capacitor, we could bring this spaghetti to a space and time, if my calculations are correct, where social distancing is unnecessary. Marty, we need a flux capacitor.
Oh, well, I think we'll need to pray about that. And ask your father.
Shut up, Marilyn!
The Mark Roman Empire. Also, a podcast. This week's episode, Shaan Sharma. It's showtime.
Episode 33, dated the 20th of May, 2020. Look at that, 2020. Yeah, whatever. I thought it was silly too. But hey, some people dig that. How was your week? Apparently, Michael Phelps had a meltdown. So it's cool now. You can have a mental breakdown during the pandemic. And it's cool because it happened to Michael Phelps. I mean, before Michael Phelps, I don't know. Seems a little weird. Don't want to be around that. It makes me uncomfortable to be around people that have mental issues. But now, since Michael Phelps, it was Michael Phelps. So, hey, he's cool. So he had a bad moment. We can understand because it's Michael Phelps. Oh, hey, you get your stimulus check? I kind of feel obligated. I got to keep giving you guys the update here. I didn't get the check. I got a nice letter. Yeah, I got a letter. Wow. Apparently, I'm gonna get. This is dated the 1st. Yeah, 20 days ago. That's what, nearly 3 weeks ago. Yeah. Apparently, I'm going to get either a check or a debit card. That's a new wrinkle now. Mind you, that the 1st of May was like a Monday, and the previous Friday, the IRS site said, yeah, you qualify. Yeah, you can do direct deposit. Yeah, that looks like a routing number and an account number. Cool. And then over the weekend, IRS decided, no, just kidding. Let's not do direct deposit. Let's send you mail. Yeah, because that would be more effective. So here we are. I got the letter. Yeah, I guess I'll get 3 cents for the orange one's signature on eBay someday. I'm the only one who has that, right? Oh, man. I got to say, I'm so grateful again to all of you who reached out, stepped up, helped me out when I had my little meltdown before Michael Phelps, before it was cool to do that. I really appreciate it because now I've got some space mentally, financially, just kind of like rebuild, take stock, as we all are. And I'm grateful that I have a social security number, that I qualify to get things like unemployment and, the stimulus money. There's people that picked the strawberries that I ate this week that were yummy and delicious. And they have a different citizenship status, so they don't qualify for that. Hopefully this new round will get them taken care of. But yeah, there's a lot of frontline workers, people in the trenches that are at risk of getting ill. I know it seems like it's over because you walk around and like nobody's wearing a mask. Not in LA. I feel like 20-30% of the people I see outside are wearing masks. I was somewhere yesterday and wow, just you're in a line and it's like you're trying to like let the people behind you know, hey, okay, 6 feet means I shouldn't be able to feel your breath on the nape of my neck. Just, I'm not a meteorologist, but I'm pretty sure. It's weird, I don't know. But, human civilization. Hey, did you like the cold open? Well, my Patreon patrons got to listen to it early. It's one of the perks for my Patreon patrons. That's right. Mark Roman Empire is now on Patreon. And I gotta be honest, we may not be seeking out advertising in the future here on the podcast. And Patreon is now branding itself as an alternative to that, which it has been, and I dig it. I think that we're going to be doing more with the swag and also the Patreon. Hopefully, here in the next upcoming weeks, I'll have a little time to develop some new additional levels of membership on Patreon. But for right now, you can get started at the citizen patron level for only $5 a month. Learn more at patreon.com/Mark Roman Empire. Hey, Shaan Sharma's on the pod today. Yeah, Shaan's a fellow SAG-AFTRA actor who's had a successful career in both theatrical and commercial screen acting, which makes him qualified to teach the subject, a novel concept here in Los Angeles. You've seen him in The Chosen, Grey's Anatomy, and Scandal. He's also very active in our union, the SAG-AFTRA, formerly known as the Screen Actors Guild, and where radio and TV announcers are. AFTRA. Yeah, all the news reporters you see, they're fellow union members. Well, not all of them, most of them. And Shaan, he's actually issued a manifesto or 3 about how our union could serve its members better, whether they are, Jack Nicholson or Meryl Streep or, Janelle Monáe or Anderson Cooper, when he chooses to work on the card. I see you, Anderson. I see what you're doing. Just saying. Anyway, really dig the conversation I had with Shaan, and we'll get more into his meticulously informed perspective in a moment. Now, my current hero tier mission is to bring home Venka and Will. They now have a home, but they are still settling into the new place. It is a little cramped. They got a bunch of stuff from different storage spaces that got jam-packed in there. They need to move that stuff into a new storage unit so they can, move around in there. They have a space, but it's a small space. Now, we've set up a private Facebook group of local hero tiers, so they are at the ready to help. But Venka could use a little more cash to afford that new storage unit. They are definitely physically and emotionally recovering. Venka, Will, and Andy the puppy, recovering from living in a car for over a year and a half. So, I'm thinking, like you're probably thinking, maybe they could reduce some of the stuff they've got. Yeah, you know what? That requires a little emotional bandwidth and some physical health. Venka can only look out of one eye right now. So they got, ongoing health issues. Mission accomplished? Not quite. So Hero Tier will continue to help them to make sure that they keep their new home. This mission is not yet complete. So we continue. We played cards for Hero Tiers 11 on Monday. We had a nice winner who won a cool prize. Go check out the video on YouTube. Cards for Hero Tiers 11 to get all the details. Next week's Cards for Hero Tiers prize is a surprise prize. Hey, follow Hero Tier on Instagram at Hero Tier Graham and discover what it's all about at herotier.org. Now, every other week or so, I like to check in with my Syracuse chemistry undergrad son, Connor. We call it the Connor caveat. So let's do that now.
Connor.
Yo.
You're done with the semester now, right?
Yeah, finally. God, that went on for way too long. Oddly enough, even though things kind of ended shortly because of, the pandemic, but somehow things kept dragging on because online stuff was just like, oh, hey, and this. But yeah, it's over now finally, and I can just be a potato, just like everybody else.
Well, okay, explain that. What does that mean? Like you're going to grow eyes that'll be dug out because you're just
No,
sitting
no. So
somewhere for a
like,
while?
I don't really have like major external things to take care of at the moment. Like, I got things to take care of, like, studying for graduate school and blah, 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 blah. But I don't have like deadlines in the immediate future to like worry about for like, since the past few months. This is like a very different thing. So it's real nice. Of course, I'll probably in the next week get into the rhythm of being productive, but it's a good time to be just like doing stuff and
Well,
not having to worry about work.
it's your summer vacation. You earned it. And just, not to be too much of a proud dad here, but, let's let the listeners know, credits wise, where are you at as far as getting that bachelor's of science?
Oh, I literally just need to take the last few classes and I could graduate. Like, hypothetically, if I just took all the classes next semester, I would be able to graduate. It's, yeah.
And this is your junior year. So technically you've only been going to college for 3 years, right?
Yes. Technically, since junior year, I was a senior, credits wise, but that's mainly just APs and stuff like that.
Well, congratulations. How do you feel you did with the finals?
I think I did well enough. Physical chemistry, which anybody who has ever heard of it is a nightmare because it's literal just quantum mechanics and the mathematics behind that. And that's while I'm good enough at mathematics, Jesus, it is a lot of calculus and stuff like
Really?
that, and it's just very dense. And I'm happy that page of my life is over because I'm more on the like conceptual biological genetics side of things, and it's cool.
So
I love
explain
quantum
the difference.
mechanics.
What's the difference?
Well, with genetics and those things, it's like learning systems and memorizing like, oh, this is this and this is this. While I guess if you simplify it down, you could say it's similar to quantum mechanics, but quantum mechanics is more so like this is the equation that relates to how you find this. To find the eigenvalue, you must utilize the eigenfunction, and an eigenfunction can be found in.
Wait, slow up. You poor old dad here.
No, yeah, welcome to day one. Yeah.
Eigenfunction. What's the eigenfunction? Or you're feeling the same way? Like, what the hell is an eigenfunction?
So you heard of Schrodinger, yeah? That dude,
No, I have not.
It's really famous in like Schrodinger's cat. That's a really well-known thing that people really, really poorly, demonstrate. The whole, oh, this cat is both dead and alive. Ha 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 ha. Actually, fun fact, that whole thing was the not a story, but it was brought upon by a guy making fun of Schrodinger's idea, because the whole thing about quantum states is that something can be and also cannot be in a certain way. Like a particle, a photon, let's say.
Right.
If you were to record, and goes into the mathematics of it. If you could record the position of that particle, of a photon, and a photon, of course, is a particle of light. You have a flashlight, it streams out photons. That kind of thing.
Okay.
If you could, like, find its position, because of how quantum mechanics works, because of the mathematics of it, and I understand why, but explaining the math would be just too much.
I believe you.
You wouldn't be able to know its velocity. And so so that's part of it.
Okay, wait. Say that again for those who maybe are not quite as quick.
So like imagine I throw a ball.
Like your dad right now.
Imagine I throw a ball at you, yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
And,
you're throwing a ball
and like we freeze frame everything and go like, oh yeah, we know this ball is up in the air going at you.
Okay.
You saw that it was moving at this speed, so it had that speed and that position. Cool. Photons don't work like that because they are just wacky. Like a lot of very small
quantum particles. Because they're so fast, or
it's because
what's wacky?
Its position isn't a matter of like a straight line. Like photons don't move. Well, first off, photons act like waves. They kind of work in vibrations. That's why you have like different frequencies of light. That's why light has different colors and such.
Okay.
So a light particle doesn't just go from A to B. It goes from A, and it could be anywhere else in the universe. But there's a probability that it's somewhere near B. And that's how
That's crazy.
Yes. So imagine doing that. We figured out equations to figure out where it could be in that position. But based on these equations, if you do solve for that equation and you know its position, because you did that, you can't actually solve for the velocity of it. Now, this isn't Schrodinger's cat. The wacky thing about Schrodinger's cat is that
I feel like I understood 5% of what you just said.
So imagine, like, that's just position, and that's just, like, speed. Now imagine you have a different, like, state you can describe, up and down. Don't want to go too much into it, but imagine something can be either up or down. Cool?
Right. Got it. Simple. Binary. I can deal.
Now, just like the position and velocity, those things can have a probability of occurring. It could either be up or down. But you know what's real wacky about quantum particles?
What's real wacky, Connor?
From
Tell
the
me.
best of our knowledge, before you observe it, it is both up and down.
Holy shit.
So imagine you have a machine that could measure whether it's up or down. You put it in a box. You take a cat, put it in the box, and the machine lets off a vicious chemical that kills the cat if it's in the up state. Yeah?
Okay.
And the box is closed. You can't observe it. Hypothetically, the cat is both dead and alive because the particle is both up and down. You get me?
Wow. Now I get it. Now I
That
get
is
it.
Schrodinger's cat. That is the whole
messed
idea.
up. Okay, now
Hypothetically, like,
Schrodinger's cat, that's a science thing, right? That's not
Yeah.
because like I have an AARP card coming in the mail any day now, right?
no. It's like, Lord, but a lot of people get that like really weird. Like they only focus on the cat being dead and alive. And like the whole
Yeah.
thing is like the guy who made up this kind of idea, not Schrodinger, but the other guy, forget his name.
Right.
He says this because it sounds so wacky. How can a cat be both dead and alive at the same time? But that's how quantum mechanics works, as far as we know.
This kind of gives us a maybe an entry point to be able to maybe imagine alternate dimensions or the idea of like parallel universes, because it's just this wacky notion of you got more than one event, if you will, happening at the exact same moment to the point where it kind of makes your conventional sense of space and time silly, because it's like, well, you know, it's not A or B, it's yes.
Yeah, it's like when you get into the quantum level of things just get wacky, to say the least. Like, I have massive respect for like quantum physicists. They go through a lot of stuff and they do a lot of like difficult math. There is a lot of equations. Like Schrodinger's equation, which is the thing that you work on basically day one, is what you would look at would be psi E
you do,
equals
not
E
me,
psi.
not me. I'm glad that you're doing it. Fry my brain. I'm already feel like my brain's fried right now.
Man, you don't even know. This is why I'm fine with just like being done with PChem at this point. It's
wow.
A time.
Some people drop acid and other people take quantum physics. Is that what you're telling me?
It's wild, to say the least. Like, conceptually, the stuff is great. I find it so interesting. Mathematically, no. I just, I'd rather just lick some sandpaper for the next 5 days than do it, Nah.
That's a vivid image. I like that. Licking sandpaper.
It would be more comfortable.
Is that going to be like the title of your memoirs someday? Like, better than licking sandpaper.
Yeah. No, a memoir. Well, it could be. Let's say that. I'm not going to leave all my possibility closed off. Anything is possible. All at the same time.
Now, talking about possibilities.
Yeah.
Can we, because this is a unique moment. I know we, talked about this before, but now that your semester's over, you don't not think about finals coming up in the next few weeks.
Right.
What's your perspective if you look back to what you were forecasting for your summer back in January and what your summer actually is? Can you go into that a little bit? Because I think people find it interesting, you being a student who's like almost done with college, because like there's a bunch of people who had like weird graduation ceremonies this past weekend, and it's like you kind of, we got a year now to see if you get to have a semi-normal college graduation, right?
Oh, pardon the dog.
It's all right. We like it. For our listeners, what kind of dog do you have?
She is a delightful German Shepherd Husky mix. She is wonderful.
Nice.
Her name's Maya. She is light of my life. Spoiled brat, but light of my life. But
Nice.
anyway, summer times. Well, in January, I was applying to do a REU, a research experience as an undergraduate. It's basically
Right.
just more opportunity to basically get more experience in the lab under your belt. In the summertime, it would be paid for. You would be paid, in fact, because you're essentially being a worker, doing work. You are learning, of course, but
It's
science.
a cool summer job, but it's giving you academic credit as well, right?
Yeah. In addition, it would have been hypothetically in Austria, which would have been, a little neat.
Nice.
But, based off of Corona, I forget when they told me, things are basically shutting down. It was like, I want to say early March when they
Yeah.
gave the cancellation
Right.
plans. And
Yeah.
then they went, oh, it's okay. You can study back in Syracuse. Like, we can still take you during the summer, blah, blah, blah. A few weeks later, nope, we're closing that down too. So now I'm back here. Hopefully I should be able to like still do stuff. Like most of my summers are usually just like chilling at home, doing stuff, maybe getting
In
friends together. I can't
upper
really do
state
that as much.
Washington.
Yep. Back in Washington, nice greenery. Yeah. So basically, I'm just nixing the whole getting people together and just doing everything online. And while it might not exactly be the same exact summer, overall, my summer plans are generally fairly still good since, I didn't really have any major travel plans besides what was nixed like months ago.
Gotcha. Now,
Yeah.
do you know yet, or is there a sense of like what the fall semester is going to be like?
Oh,
Because normally you'd
gosh.
be like heading back, like last week of August, right?
Yep. No, the university is it's both alive and not alive. It is trying to,
It's that cat.
yeah, just like that cat. Meow. That it just they want us to be there, but at the same time they don't want to be sued. So they're kind of like going,
Right.
we're so happy to have you guys back next time. And they're being very
If you wanted
vague.
to do that voluntarily, we're not
Yeah.
telling you to.
They're just, they're trying to keep the hype up for a situation that very much may not happen. They're like asking us to put in deposits for like coming back. So like they're acting like we're coming back, but at the same time, most universities
Yeah.
have gone in the New York area. No, of course not. We're not bringing our students back in the fall because
Right.
obviously this thing isn't calming down yet. But we'll see how things go. Realistically, even if given the option, I might, depending on how things go. If like somehow vaccine has popped up in the next month or two, it's very well likely I would go back. If like things get worse or things stay like
Mhm.
at the same level we're at right now, yeah, I might just stay back and just do online stuff because I'm
Sure.
assuming they'd still do that because they have a lot of international students that have been shored up. One of my friends is actually still stuck there and is going to be stuck there till June. And like they're
At Syracuse.
they're not having a good time to say the least. They can't go back to China. It's
Oh man.
yeah, it's
Right?
really unfortunate. But
Wow.
yeah, a lot of international students have just been like really screwed over with everything going on. So yeah, I don't really know much else to go from there. It just sucks.
Crazy. Well, today the stock market was kind of going nuts
Oh.
because Moderna apparently came out with a vaccine trial. They had 8 healthy volunteers, and that trial showed that their vaccine was safe.
Ooh.
So now they're on an accelerated timetable to begin a larger human trial. What
That's
does that
wonderful.
mean? Who knows? But yeah, the stock market was seeming to really like that. And a lot of stocks that would need a vaccine. Like, real estate was doing great. Transportation stocks, Hertz car rental, Avis
Right.
car rental, all just like having huge monster days. So,
I
if that's all people, guesstimating and grabbing onto what little slim bit of fragments of good news we might have.
yeah,
But
the toughest
What's your
thing
thoughts
though
on that?
is so like it is good
Since-
news, but also this is science news. And the major problem with
Yeah.
science news is as a researcher, you want to get paid. How do you get paid? With grants and various other things. How do you get grants? By making good news. Because by
Yep.
bringing things forward and making it as positive as possible, people want to pay you. So
Yep.
how I'm interpreting this is, yes, we are getting good results. They are really pushing. We got good results. Please keep paying us. Please keep us going. At the same time, especially with human trials, you don't know the long-term results. Like, no matter how positive something is, like, oh, congrats, you don't have it. Oh, what? You have AIDS now? Oh, how did that happen? You know? Like,
right.
Like, obviously, I'm not going to get that, but like,
you just grew a third ear. You have like an 11th toe. No big deal. That grows out of your nose. But hey, cured, you don't have the corona anymore.
But you're going to die in the next month. You know?
That too.
Like, I don't want to put a damper on it because this sounds like really, really good news. But you got to stay, like, you don't want to, like, jump on things too quickly because that will lead to just, like, imagine, like, stock market-wise, things are good news. Things are popping up. Suddenly, oh no, we got a death from the vaccine. Oh, things crash back down. Like, I know we need good news. I know we need hope. I know we need things. But if we go too quickly, if we accelerate too much on these things, it's just going to lead to another crash. And we don't need that right now.
Right.
Yeah. Patience. Even though that's like the worst of things, especially for people being locked up in their apartments, not even being able to like leave too much.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's hard, but we still need it.
How's the garden coming?
Oh, it's doing fine. We got radishes that are flowering. Something that, for people that don't know about radishes, like, you know, radishes have that root, that kind of, not that like little swollen red deliciousness that we consume, put in salads, blah, blah, blah. When radish it flowers, it actually produces little seed pods. And when they're fresh and green, they are fresh and delicious. And I personally... Yeah, I grow them for the seed pods usually if I don't like get good radish roots. Yeah, no, I enjoy it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and radishes are so stupidly easy to grow. Anybody can do it if they so wished. They grow up in like... Could I
grow a radish in my inside? Yes. Can I grow it indoors?
You could, hypothetically. Like, radishes are really like, they're good and quick to grow. Okay. Just need some like soil, water them every once in a while, and you're good. You probably need to hand pollinate the flowers, but that's not really too hard. Just get a little toothbrush or...
Oh, speaking of pollinating, did you see, a couple articles came out last week or two. Apparently, when people think of pollination, most people think of honeybees, but apparently moths do a lot of pollinating too, and we don't give them the credit for it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, actually, since I did work in like honey for like a hot week or two, I got to learn a little bit.
That's right, you did. Tell us a little bit about that for a quick sec.
Yeah, basically, a friend's dad worked as a honey farmer. Because of that, I got to do a little like temporary work there, just get a few bucks in. Unfortunately, bees weren't really working very well that season, so I only got to be there for like a week or two. But while I was there, I did a little bit of research just to get to know a little bit more. It was a fun time. I just bottled honey and such. Got a few bee stings, but bees are surprisingly nice as long as you don't mess with them. Got even like that bee suit thing.
Take your word for that.
Yeah, no. I think the few times I ever got stung was when I actually sat on one and when I like tried to grab a jar, but a bee was stuck to it because of honey. So it just stung me out of reflexes. Otherwise, it wasn't stung, which was like really nice. Anywho, bees. Fun fact. Most like honeybees that we have are invasive. Not invasive, but like they are foreign from like the States. They aren't supposed to be here. And they have been actually filling out the niches that natural, wild, various other pollinators have been having. And that's actually been fairly bad for a lot of things. They have been acting like dandelions, filling out areas.
Really?
And just like, yeah. Well, less like
bees
dandelions.
Where do they come from? Where do the bees?
From Europe, European honeybee. That's like, that is the honeybee that we usually have.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it's like smallpox. Hi. Columbus is like, hello, Native Americans. We bring you. First of all, we're calling you Americans.
Yeah,
Native Americans.
Good old Amerigo Vespucci.
And here's some smallpox, and here's some honeybees. You're welcome.
It's fine. Like, so moths, they're good pollinators. We have birds like hummingbirds, also good pollinators. Bats are pollinators. Also, like flies and small insects that you can't even see. Those are actually very, very important pollinators that are like native to the area and like really good. So even when we heard about the honeybees like declining, that's a shame. And like on an industrial level, we utilize that for protests and such. But for like the ecological, everything else, nah, they're chilling. They're fine. So
I like how you put that. That's interesting. On the industrial level, we're
Yeah.
bummed out about the plight of the honeybees.
Yeah.
Interesting. So if you look at it from not a monetary stock market view, profit motive, and instead look at it, well, how's our ecology? How's our ecosystem? Doing okay.
Yeah.
No big worries. They were invasive anyways to begin with. So, no big loss,
Yeah. Of course, like I do not have a PhD in ecology. So I don't take my word as law. Like I highly recommend you look these things up yourself, like, the adults you are. But it's my own 2 bits. It's what I've been hearing and what I've been looking up myself.
Fair enough. Well, as a psychologist like to say, my son, I think our time is up.
Ooh.
But this was kind of cool.
Yeah, no. A good old science factor this season.
Yeah, well, it's one thing to not be an expert on something, but I think for more people than not, knowing that something you thought you knew wasn't quite what you thought it was, and it creates a little curiosity to investigate further. I think that could maybe be a healthy thing for all of us.
Oh yeah, especially in a time when you have all the time in the world. There's a lot of mysteries and unknowns in this world that you could easily fill in or start to fill in with just some Googling.
Right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, cool, Connor. Let's check in again in a couple weeks. Sound cool?
Yeah, sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
Another Connor caveat.
Always delightful and fun to check in with the Connor. Who knew honeybees were the invaders? Always learn something new with Connor. I dig it. Hey, Lieutenant Frank has done 40 personalized short videos on the celebrity shout-out platform Cameo. You can roast your friends. Surprise that person for whom you never can find the right gift. Of course, you can deliver unique happy birthday message as well, or whatever. Have some fun with it. It's only $10, so hurry and get a few cameos from Lieutenant Frank before the price increases. Cameo.com/Vegas 90210.
Like the Tory spelling vehicle. Yeah. How'd you know?
If you listen to people with opinions about the entertainment business, you might end up paying hundreds or thousands of dollars to some sketchy dude in the San Fernando Valley who earned his last acting credit sometime before, the Berlin Wall fell. Back when the show to watch was not Billions, but Wall Street, a feature film, where the real movie stars live. Surrender to the suit, Barry. You hear the sketchy acting teacher say, hey, what could go wrong? Oh boy. Hey, in case you haven't paid any attention during this pandemic, people are ridiculously, tragically, yet hilariously, but profoundly and monumentally stupid. Not all people, but enough. I've spent most of the last decade here in LA, the city of angels, Los Angeles. I've yet to take an acting class in the Valley. Maybe I'm not a real actor. Shaan Sharma is definitely a real actor, and I first encountered him at my union's headquarters, a space we rent on Wilshire Boulevard. I mean, other entertainment unions own the real estate that houses their headquarters, not SAG-AFTRA. We rent our space. But I digress. Shaan was teaching a commercial acting class, a class free. That's right, no cost to me and to other fellow members, card-carrying members of SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Union. Now, a class taught by not only a successfully, actively working commercial actor, but taught by a commercial session director. Shaan explains what that is and the importance of it during the interview. Shaan was teaching something he did and did well, and he taught from his experience on the front lines of casting. Since then, I've yet to book any commercial acting. Too busy busking.
Oh, the memories. But I've gotten more familiar with Shaan. I notice what he does, teaching and helping fellow actors. I see you, Shaan. I see what you're doing. He recently started the Storytellers Conservatory podcast. He's a self-described journeyman actor. He does the work. He gets into the details others might miss, but he's very pragmatic and direct, a very conscientious, professional human who happens to be an actor. Back in the 80s, there was that iconic commercial line, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. I got Shaan Sharma to talk on my podcast. Let's listen, shall we? Shaan Sharma.
Hello.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing as well as can be expected under the circumstances.
Wow, ain't that a fact? Yeah, and for a variety of reasons too. Am I right?
Yeah, lots going on.
Well, I got to say, just to pick up a little bit on what we were talking about before we started here, and it's cool that we can see each other. Just to let my audience know, I use Zencastr as my vendor to record because they record locally on each participant's device, which gives superior audio. So that way you're not hearing all the VoIP crackly over the internet stuff. You're actually hearing what, the other person's hearing that they're, where they're sitting at, if that makes any sense. But I started today with another Minnesotan, my Aunt Ellen, who's in Northfield, which she told me is about, an hour and a half south of the Twin Cities. Does that sound right, Shaan?
That's right, yeah.
Because you're from Minnesota too, right?
Born and raised, that's right.
Crazy. So we see each other on Zoom right now. We have our Zoom muted, but we're like having a slightly more human conversational experience. So hopefully this makes for an even better interview than all of you citizens here in the Mark Roman Empire, also a podcast, have been enjoying. So we got that going for us. But Shaan, what I want to do, this is kind of a different kind of interview because normally with my fellow actors, I love to, go into their background and then go into their credits and, kind of like a verbal reel highlights of the career type thing and what's happening now and what's happening forward. I want to do a little bit of that with you, but there's so much crazy important stuff going on with unions in general, but especially for our union, Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA, SAG-AFTRA, as we now call it. So I want to do most of the conversation on that, if that's cool with you. Maybe do
Absolutely.
5-10 minutes. We'll zip through so people can know who Shaan is, if they don't know already. Let's start with where I met you. I feel like it was, you've been very generous giving back to your fellow actors by teaching, because you are yourself a successful working commercial actor. And I believe it was a commercial acting workshop that you taught for free as a benefit to fellow union members. And I attended that at our Wilshire headquarters that our union likes to rent because we don't own our building. We'll talk about that in a sec. But is that where we met?
Yeah, I mean, that's likely where we met. I mean, I think, anybody who has been involved in our our union showing up to events and things probably knows that there's been an explosion of educational content over the last 4 years, thanks to Serena Kung and Ilyan Kachevan-Mordevan, who's our executive director and associate executive director of our union.
Yeah.
They really value our members having access to things that help their careers. And so Serena has really helped expand our member education programming, which is what takes place in the Cagney boardroom, where you get these large lectures or these guest speakers coming in and doing these nice workshops or lectures. And then in the conservatory, our conservatory is completely transformed in the last 4 years, where now it's serving almost 3,000 members. Well, it was before COVID hit, but it's serving about 3,000 members, about 40 classes a month. And I've been very involved in the last 4 years in all of that. So it's likely we met during one of those things.
Yeah, I'm, and there's a lot of people too. So I certainly don't expect you to remember
that given moment. I think there's been more stuff going on social media and what have you, but we have met in person at different events.
Yeah.
And union working as well. I think I've done one or two of those.
Yeah, and you're very involved on the front lines, picketing, etc. So it's been fun to see you engage as well.
Well, I try. I feel a unique spot because, and this won't be too autobiographical. I am a Mark, but I'm not Mark Maron. But it is early days of my podcast, so I noticed when I got to LA that many actors, not all, but many actors, their primary motivation was either fame or fortune. And I don't understand that. Like I intellectually grasp it for other people, but for myself, it does not in any way ring true. For me, I've been an entertainer my entire life. And I had to struggle through some experiences to get to a point deep in my adulthood to realize I'm an entertainer. It's okay for me to embrace the fact I'm an entertainer. And it's okay for me to go out in the world and proceed with the rest of my life doing what I love to do, entertaining people. And whether anyone wants it or whether I get paid for it is completely beside the point. Like if I had zero, or if I had all the fame and fortune necessary to do whatever one wants to do in this world, right now, I'd probably be involved with organizing other Screen Actors Guild members to form a picket line around Amazon warehouses with Amazon workers.
Mm-hmm.
Which of course begs the question why that's not actually happening right now. But it's weird to have all these plans for what I want to do as an entertainer and also be a member of the Screen Actors Guild. And I share some things with a lot of people. There's a lot of things I don't share. And at this point, I've written off what I have done in the union as far as work, which is mostly background acting. I don't expect to ever be cast doing background acting for at least a year, if not longer, for a variety of reasons. My full expectation is that one day I'll produce my own production and I will use union talent and maybe I'll get a little more respect from fellow members because I'm one of the people that before merger, I paid my money to get into AFTRA, which was basically all you had to do. And then with the merger, I became SAG-AFTRA. So when people share their stories, when people watch the Academy Awards or especially the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and the actor shares their little story of like, oh, well, how did you, what vouchers, what production got you your card? And they have this wonderful, heartwarming story. Mine is not heartwarming at all. And it reveals me to the rest of, especially those who are legacy Screen Actors Guild members before merger. They're like, oh, you're one of the guys that paid to get into AFTRA right before the merger and gamed the system, which, whether it's true or not, like that's a stigma that's there and it's part of our culture. And, I'm involved with that. So I feel like I'm in this weird place amongst other members. So when I see what you're doing, especially given how your personality is and how detail-oriented and meticulous and, it's a trite phrase these days, but it's like fair and balanced. Like you implement that. You're a very level-headed person. And I've noticed this before we had our election. And the way I noticed is because I, as a member, taking advantage of my member benefits, which I feel like my dues are an absurdly tiny fraction of the value that I get out of it just with a handful of those classes. I'm thinking I'd like to do some commercial acting. I've done a little background on commercial acting and it's some good money. So I thought, how do I learn? And when you taught the class, I was so grateful. There was so much valuable information and I found it really useful to me as a working actor. So to fast forward to now, I have a real hard time believing that you are this different person than the Shaan Sharma I saw teaching a very educated, deeply informed by not only, logic and research, but also your own personal experience. And I just see you continuing to do that. Like you address something
and you methodically break it down. Like you've been handed a script and you're breaking it down. You're going, okay, what's suddenly I'm Danny DeVito and Get Shorty. What's my motivation? But I see you do that, and I've seen you do that not just with commercial acting and how to teach that to fellow actors, but I've seen you do that with our union and go, okay, let's get to first base here. What is our union? What makes up our union? And you go down into all the details, and you go down these corridors that are all dusty and have cobwebs that have been there this whole time, and you discover these things that were discoverable, but just apparently people didn't bother to go discover them, but you did. And that made sense to you. And that makes sense to me that someone would do that. And I'm grateful you've done that. You've really blazed a path of just revealing important information for fellow members. And you've got 2 manifestos, one from last year and one from last month that we'll get into here in a little bit. But I just want to say, we'll go into a little bit of your background in Minnesota, what brought you to LA, why you're an actor, a little bit what you do in commercial acting. But I definitely want to get into your 2 manifestos and a lot of the issues about the union. So
yeah, and before we jump into that stuff, just to comment on a couple of things that you just said.
Sure.
One of them is I don't think I'm aware of any members that have gone around asking others how they joined SAG-AFTRA in order to discriminate against anybody who may have joined through background work, through joining AFTRA and being grandfathered in, or right. I mean, the way I qualified for my SAG membership was when I was like 20 years old, and I did background on a Best Buy commercial, and somebody said, hey, you want to go talk to this guy in front of this TV? And before I knew it, I was upgraded and I was eligible to join the union. So
nice.
I got into the union through background work and being upgraded myself. And so I certainly would encourage anybody to treat our members with respect, no matter how they ended up in the union. Well, ultimately, the entire acting community is a family. Only a portion of our family is unionized right now. So I don't look at people who are non-union as somehow less than or anything like that. It's just some segment of the acting community has chosen to stand up for a minimum value, a minimum amount of work conditions, and a minimum value for their art. And a much larger segment of the acting community has not yet stood up for their own value by unionizing, or they really want to become part of the union, but they can't afford the initiation fee, or they are waiting for the best time to join the union. And I'm constantly talking to members about their question as to when is the right time to join the union. And I'm happy to have that conversation with them. So certainly, I don't. It doesn't feel good to hear anybody using language around you or anyone else how you joined by joining AFTRA somehow makes you any less of a brother or sister of ours in the union. So that doesn't sit well with me, and I would discourage anybody from thinking that way. The other part about what you said is, I 95% of my time spent in our union, which is a lot. It has been a lot for the last 4 years. I mean, I've engaged 20, 30 hours a week for years now in terms of the teaching that I do, the committees that I'm a part of, and the work that I'm doing outside of those meetings, et cetera, grassroots efforts. So I'm very, very involved. 95% of all of that stuff is in the most loving, supportive, creative, just trying to provide value to members. And that's how I've built relationships with members, is just on the front lines in class after class or meeting after meeting. So to suddenly, when I speak up about things that concern me, and when I use particularly strong language about what's happening, my hope and what I think is happening is that people are saying, wow, like from my experience with Shaan, he's pretty level-headed, he's pretty chill, and he's patient. So if he's speaking that strongly, there might be something to it. Right. And that's really how I see it, is that it takes a lot to get me to be fired up where I want to challenge something. And if I'm willing to put my professional and personal reputation on the line to speak out about something, I would hope that would get people's attention who know me and know how I behave.
It makes sense to me. I mean, that's what I see. You're like Spock in some ways. You are. I mean, that is a huge compliment. You're very thoughtful. organized, the attention to detail, and you're very hesitant to express, unnecessary, superfluous emotion, which might sound odd for an actor, but, emotion is a choice. And when it's necessary, you have it to use, but you also recognize that a lot of people squander emotion when it's, inappropriate or unnecessary. And you just you have a certain set of skills as far as how you use your emotions. And I recognize that in you. And
yeah, I only get kind
teach me, master.
No, the only time that I get amped is when I see something happening that's not right. And not only that it's not right, but that the reasonable expressions of concern are dismissed or ignored. In other words, you don't have, if you greet a concerned opinion with scorn, with dismissal, with insults, with attacking who they are as a human being, it's only going to make them, well, they have two choices, right? If I express that I'm concerned about something in a reasonable way, and instead of saying, okay, I hear you, let's talk about this, let's figure it out, let's work together on this, well, then that leaves no room for me to get all emotional and amped up. But if you say to me, you're wrong, you've got ulterior motives, you're a bad person, you're a liar, you're this or that, well, then I'm not those things. So I'm going to have to take a different approach to get my point across. Otherwise, what am I just going to go home and give up? I'm not a quitter. I don't think many people in this union are quitters. We're in this for the long haul. So I think any responses to what I've written or what I've been saying that involve just trying to attack who I am as a human being really kind of miss the point, because all it does is make me more creative in how I'm going to get my message across. And it's so easy. Listen, if you would just open the front door and let me in so we could talk, then we can have a conversation. But if you're going to slam the door in my face and put a moat around your house, okay, well, then maybe I've got to go under or around or back or parachute in or whatever. But, I'm going to find a way to communicate what I believe in.
Right. Jeff Goldblum said life will find a way.
Shaan Sharma.
Life finds a way. Yeah. I had Jeff's guitarist, John Story, on the podcast a few weeks ago. So I'd love to have Jeff on, of course, at some point. But it's amazing, the people in this town. This rich, we'll return to this concept, in a minute. But our union has the goods when it comes to, culture. And so these different references that we all make to film or even music or TV, that's our members. It's our members who performed that, in some cases wrote it, in some cases, gave new life and direction to what the writers had in mind. We really, as members, we're sitting on just this treasure trove of all kinds of good stuff, not only authority, to be spokesperson for a good cause, but also just the cultural memes, the things that bring us joy in life. That all comes from our members. All unions are so valuable, but it's really fun to be a part of one that makes such an impact on our everyday culture. Right? Yeah. It's amazing. Well, just to address one quick thing for those who I've never had anyone hunt me down, Shaan, just so you know about how I joined. But it has come up in numerous conversations, and I can probably consign it to the same realm. There's a lot of these different private Facebook groups that I know you're in as well, that you look at it and it's like Twitter. You're like, okay, really, people? Or comments on YouTube videos. It's really? Seriously? So a lot of it you can kind of dismiss. But I actually had 1.5 vouchers. How do you get a half voucher? Yeah, I still don't know, but I had one. So I actually had 50% of the 3 vouchers you typically need if, because there's that option, and there's also the SAG or the Taft-Hartley option where you get thrown lines. So I was halfway there, but I do feel like there is a cultural difference within our union between the legacy Screen Actors Guild folks and someone in my position, which on the one hand, as a lover of film and TV, I totally get and I can respect. And I have enormous respect for everyone who is a legacy Screen Actors Guild member. But then, of course, it's like, well, once you prove your chops and, how do you define that? What's your metrics? Then what is the difference? But, it's not a big thing, but it is a thing that I feel like needs to be addressed at some point. That said,
it just takes some good leadership for people to make clear that, everybody who's decided to stand up for the value of our art is a valued member of our community. It doesn't matter how they join the union. You're standing up for me. I'm standing up for you. End of story.
Well, Shaan, you are, to me, regardless of what label you have or what title you have, you simply are a leader in our union because of what you do and what you've offered to members. So as a leader that I look up to in our union, that means a lot to me that you say that. I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks, man.
Hey, let's do a little Primrose Path here. You grew up in Minnesota, and I just talked to my Aunt Ellen in Minnesota. What was that like, being in Minnesota?
Listen, Minnesota is a beautiful place to grow up. My parents are both immigrants from India. I was born and raised in Minnesota, and I can't really point out a time other than, kids being mean in elementary school and junior high where my ethnicity was ever an issue. I mean, it was a very safe, a very fun place to grow up. I had a wonderful childhood and apart from, family craziness that all of us can relate to, but like I had so many blessings and it was great education. I went to a really good public school where I got into acting and music and have friends to this day that I made back then that are my dearest and closest friends. And then I worked
Minnesota.
I grew up in the western suburbs. So I was born in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, and then I grew up in New Hope for a few years, and then Plymouth, Minnesota, which is in the Wayzata School District. So Wayzata is best known for being close to Lake Minnetonka, which is where Prince had his home.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm a Minnesota boy through and through. I miss Leanne Chin and Big Bowl immensely, which are two Chinese restaurant chains that they have in Minnesota.
Okay.
And, I don't have much reason to go back because my mom got remarried and she moved to Detroit and my sister lives in Colorado. So
Gotcha.
Not a lot takes me back to Minnesota these days, but it's I got my start in acting out there. I acted for 10 years in the local market before I moved to Los Angeles. And, I was very active out there. I mean, people who know my history and know me from Minnesota, it wouldn't surprise them that I'm out here doing stuff for the union and trying to speak up for what I think is wrong, et cetera.
Right.
Because in Minnesota, I had a series of fashion shows. I produced four fashion shows called the Fresh Face Showcase.
Nice.
You can still Google it and find information, but essentially I started producing these big events to spread awareness about the modeling and acting scams that were out there, like the John Casablancas, John Robert Powers, Barbara, et cetera.
Oh, wow.
Good for you. I got taken for like $5,000 as an 18-year-old, and then I decided it was going to be my mission in life to put them out of business for screwing me over and others. And, it took me a few years, but I got it done. And John Casablancas was kicked out of the state of Minnesota in, I believe, 2005 or 6.
Nice.
Because we finally got a front page story done on them in the Star Tribune. So it really wouldn't surprise anybody in Minnesota to know I'm out here raising hell as well when it comes to some stuff that I find to be not right.
Right. So what did ultimately bring you to LA?
I was working for a company that ran out of money, and we all needed to find something else to do for a while they tried to raise funds. And I had taken a business trip with that company to Los Angeles in the fall of 2004. And I ended up randomly at Enterprise Fish Company in Venice with a buddy of mine. And I met these three women that were all kind of middle-aged and in the industry. And one of them said, I think you should move to LA. I think you'd do well here. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm scared of LA. I'm a Minnesota boy. What would I do in LA? He's like, it's just a city like any other city. You shouldn't be intimidated. I think you'd do well here. And so it never left my mind. And 3 years later, when the company ran out of money, I'm like, what the hell? Why don't I just go out to LA? I'm an actor. There's only so much you can do in Minnesota. There's not enough film and TV for to even participate in. So my girlfriend and I packed up the car, moved out here, and slept on a friend's couch for the first month, and then started in 2007 in the summer. And I've been here.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's not too far off of when I came to LA. I came to LA, I want to say 2009.
Yeah. Yeah, I was here for 2 years. And then the company that I used to work for got funded again. So they hired me back to Minnesota for a year. So I went back from 2009 to 2010. And then while I was back, the company got taken over by a Goldman Sachs like shark of an investor, and we all got kicked out of the company. So as soon as my lease was up on my place, I moved back to LA in the fall of 2010.
Okay. Nice. And you've developed a nice, you've done some theatrical, but you're known for your commercial acting, would you say? Which one would you say?
I mean, it's, I think my theatrical acting and my commercial acting have kind of leveled out to be kind of equal. I mean, I would say I'm better known now for my theatrical work. I've done about, my work really started in earnest in the summer of 2013. Even though I moved out here in 2007 and I got a job in casting almost right away, and I've been a casting professional for about 12 years as a session director for a lot of commercial casting directors.
Okay, hold on a sec. Session director.
Yeah.
What is that for our listeners who maybe aren't in the industry? They don't know what that is.
Yeah, session director means I'm not the casting director. I don't work for the client. I work for a casting director with the specific job responsibility of directing the actors, putting them on tape, and just facilitating the audition process. So the casting director can be in their office, they can be scheduling actors for other sessions, they can be closing business, they can be taking pitches from representation. Basically, a casting director gets a job casting something, and then they hire me to run the actual auditions. And so it's primarily done on the commercial side. In a theatrical office, they usually have casting associates and assistants that are getting paid that help out with that kind of stuff. But on the commercial side, the commercial casting directors hire people like me and lobby assistants and casting assistants, but it's my responsibility to run the whole day of auditions for the casting director. And so at this point, I've worked with over 45 of the top commercial casting directors, some of whom also cast theatrically, but about 95% of what I've helped cast is commercial. And so that's how I've met thousands and thousands and thousands of our members, because I've been putting them on tape for many years.
And you have a podcast yourself, the Storytellers Conservatory podcast, right?
Yeah, very recent. I mean, I think I launched it just a couple of weeks before the COVID-19 crisis hit. But just as a way for me to, I've had a wonderful expansion in the last few years of my own personal network. And it's really fun because we not only bring in somebody who's an established industry professional, like we had one with Alan Hooper that I just put up like 3 weeks ago. And, Alan Hooper has been the casting associate with Jeff Greenberg for Modern Family for the last decade, and he's awesome and a huge protector of talent, and I love Alan. And instead of just me interviewing him, I invited one of our students in the studio, Brittany Dassa, who's a USC student. So she's somebody who's just beginning her career, and then she had the opportunity to meet Alan, to ask him questions, to hear the conversation. So it was actually a brilliant idea that Jack Levy had, who's a buddy of mine. We have a podcast episode where we interview him as well. He's an Emmy Award-winning supervising sound editor for dozens of network TV shows. And it was Jack's idea that it would be great to have an actor who is at the beginning of their career, and then somebody like me who's kind of in the journeyman category. And that way you'd get both perspectives in the interview. So yeah, that's the podcast has been a lot of fun, but it's in its infancy. We just started it.
Well, I look forward to hearing that episode. Yesterday, I listened to the first episode, which was literally by acclamation a part one. So I'm looking forward to read part two. But it just a lot of, you had a roundtable conversation and just a lot of good inside baseball stuff for, actors who are interested in becoming, booking more commercial work.
Oh, I think that would be such a great episode for people to listen to, because essentially it was me, Charles Carpenter, Ava Himmel, and John Ruby. And anybody who's auditioned commercially has been put on tape by at least one of us, if not all four of us, over the last dozen years. I mean, those are four of the top commercial casting session directors in Los Angeles, and just lovely, lovely people. So we basically go through the entire job and casting process and tips all along the way. I think that would be I think those 2 episodes, every commercial actor in the country should listen to those episodes.
Now, Shaan, do you need to show your union card to listen to any episodes of your podcast?
Nope. As long as you have a device that can access podcasts, you have every right to listen to it.
Well, for those of you who are listening to this right now,
you can find it on every platform. We're on everything.
Check it out. We'll have links in the episode page.
Yeah,
of course, including all Shaan's IMDb and website.
Yeah, but my point is, it took me a little while to get the hang of things in Los Angeles, and I thought I was a good enough actor when I moved from Minnesota with a decade of experience in doing the plays.
Right.
But until I really humbled myself and really learned the craft of on-camera acting for drama, single cam, and multi-camera comedy, it wasn't until 2013 that my theatrical career really started to move. So I've done about 35 commercial campaigns, but I've done about 40 network TV series, and I'm on one TV show right now called The Chosen.
Cool.
And so it's about 75 commercial and theatrical credits in about 6 years. And that's where the bulk of my resume comes from. So I'm still getting started, man. I got out here at 27 and I've been cranking since then, but I'm in my prime now, just doing as much work as I can.
That's amazing. What, so tell us a little bit, like you mentioned before briefly, you said it was a Best Buy commercial that got you your SAG card?
Yeah.
And what was that like? You're on set doing background and suddenly someone says, do this?
Yeah, it's 20 years ago now, so I'm trying to think of the exact details, but it was an overnight shoot at a local Best Buy somewhere in Minneapolis, and I was, I'm sure chewing on Crafty somewhere behind stage, and somebody comes up to me and
remember
says,
Crafty?
Hey, yeah, right. That'll be a thing of the past. But somebody just said, hey, you look cool. Why don't you come over and talk to this dude in front of this TV? And I knew that they had flown that guy out from Los Angeles to shoot this commercial in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Best Buy is headquartered out of Minnesota, just in case anybody is curious.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they brought me up to this guy. We shot the shit in front of this TV for a half hour. And then next thing I know is, 3 or 4 weeks later, I'm napping in the middle of the day and I get a call from my agent saying there's a check for $15,000 waiting for me at the office. Nice. I didn't even know I had been upgraded. It wasn't until I got that call that I was like, wait, what? And at that age, $15,000 was might as well have been $1 million. I was
right.
I was like, I can buy a computer. I can go out and hang out with my friend. I was delivering pizzas at the time. So for me, it was
I've done that. I hear you. Yeah, that's a big, when you're driving pizzas, $15,000, it's life-changing.
Yeah, I worked for Papa John's, Pizza Hut, and Domino's all on Grand Avenue in St. Paul, Minnesota for a couple of years. It's like the most lucrative territory to work as a pizza delivery driver, because you got all these neighborhoods and you got tons of colleges like St. Thomas, and Kate's, Hamlin, Augsburg, you name it. It was a great job. I drove around for 9 hours a day listening to podcasts and talk radio and delivering pizzas and talking on my cell phone. It was good.
Very cool. Yeah, I was stuck in Michigan for a hot decade. So I remember Pizza Hut. I don't know if Marco's Pizza. I think that was a local concern.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's because I was in a different headspace, so you're probably listening to better stuff than I was listening to.
No, dude, I was listening to the most random stuff. It's just there's only so much music you can listen to driving around 9 hours a day.
Okay, were you listening to Rush Limbaugh? Because that's what I was listening to. All right.
I don't know. I'm trying to think back. I think sometimes the only thing that was on late at night was Jeff Rentz or George Noory talking about UFOs and things like that.
Nice. Yeah, no, I was still in my my pre-union, pre-Big Short, because I grew up very religious and very conservative. I literally founded the Young Conservatives Club in my high school. I went to a college specifically based on its conservative credentials. In fact, I got to interact with William F. Buckley Jr., who, for anyone who's in politics, he founded National Review. And is literally the intellectual godfather of everything you see on the right today. Although it's amusing to see in the latest administration, the conversations of some people who are still alive. I can't
I got to spend time with William F. Buckley Jr. And I think he would just be beside himself with shame and just like, what the fuck just happened to my America, looking at what's going on right now. So it's kind of amusing to see people that I remember from that time and see how they, drink the Kool-Aid now. I'm just like, wow. Because even when I remember when I used to think that way, it's interesting. It's when you know the history and the details, we're in such a binary time now where it's like left, right, yes, no, black, white. There's no nuance. There's no ability to, look at, circumstances or extra details. It's just like yes or no. And I see that on the national level, and I also see that in our union, our union there's two parties, and it's like, you're either with us or against us. And there's no, understanding that, this is very complex. And it's interesting how the pandemic now is kind of revealing that a lot of our assumptions and our binary thinking it doesn't work.
Yeah,
because I always seem to be a lot more open to new thinking.
I feel like very few things fit into a binary system, just either one way or the other. It feels like most of life is in the gray that requires critical thinking and communication, which people either don't make the time for or have the time for. And that's when we get kind of forced to choose a camp as opposed to really talking through and thinking through these issues. Sometimes it's easier to just put all your trust in a label and just hope for the best, just because we're all busy, we're all trying to do the best we can, but then we lose so much by doing that. And especially within our union, which is a microcosm for the greater country as a whole, we're ostensibly all on the same side. We're all about, we all want the same things. And really what we want, I guess I will only speak for myself, but from what I understand, really what I feel like I want and what I see so many other members want is just to be living their dreams, acting in film, television, commercials, voiceovers, etc., just telling stories for a living and being able to raise their families and have retirement income and be taken care of with their healthcare and financially, etc. And so there's an old paradigm that don't ask your union, well, first of all, there was this whole thing for a while where, people would point out like SAG isn't a union, it's a guild. It's a professional.
Yeah, explain that for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, well, a guild is a professional association. It's where, professionals come together, for certain collective responsibility, like, sure, we'll let you negotiate contracts, etc. But you don't look to your guild for employment. A union is synonymous with a place that's actually, meant to organize labor and help that labor pool get employed. Most unions have hiring halls where you go to your union and they help you get hired. So there's a weird, cognitive dissonance going on where some members of our leadership of the union love to call SAG-AFTRA a union. We're a union. They use that word all day long, but then they'll say, but it's not our job to get you work. We're just supposed. So SAG-AFTRA is conveniently a guild when certain member leaders want to make it that. And it's also conveniently a union when they want to, trumpet the union thing. I personally don't care which name you call it. I think we're all members of this community because we think it will help us tell stories for a living and take care of ourselves and our loved ones. And most of our members are not working and want their investment in this union to do more than just be a Costco card in their wallet that allows them to audition for union projects. I think most people are part of this community. They want value. And I love that our members come to the classes and things that we have to offer. And I'm on a tear right now to get as many people educated and engaged in volunteerism so that they can see what I see for their own two eyes. And that way I'm not the only voice out there pointing out ways that we need to change or improve. But, members want their union to help them get representation, to get trained so that they can really compete and be the best performers out there. They want to meet their colleagues who have accomplished so much in film and television and learn from them. They want help meeting casting directors and writers who are all part of sister guilds and associations like the Writers Guild, Directors Guild, the CSA, CCDA. That's what our members really want. Certainly our members that are working, certainly the members that are working in the upper echelons who are stars or names or have really solid careers, for them, they may not need the education and the networking as much as they need just good contracts, good working conditions, and enforcement of those contracts. But that is about 6-ish% of our entire union. So the 95% of the rest of us need support because we're competing out there to even make enough money to have health care or have retirement income or support ourselves. So the question becomes, do we want to hold on to this antiquated vision of what SAG used to be or what SAG-AFTRA is, where it's like, don't come to us for help with employment. We're only here to negotiate and enforce the contracts. It's like, well, so many of our members aren't working these contracts. How do we get them working these contracts so that they do care?
Right.
That's part of why educating people and why even just doing this podcast with you is so helpful, because there's this chicken and the egg thing. I'm not going to care about the union until I'm making enough money to really warrant it. But then if I don't pay attention to the union and it's dysfunctional, then it's not going to help me get enough work as a performer. So it's like, do I care about the union before I'm successful, or do I care about it after I'm successful? It's kind of,
No, that's a very interesting point that you bring up. I mean, for me, I feel like I'm in a unique spot because when I joined the union, I didn't have representation, and I didn't have my networks lined up as such, or I knew people involved with ongoing productions that were a few seasons in type things. So there was work that would have been useful to have, but I didn't have the network set up yet to get booked. And since the stuff I've worked, I see how I'm cast. I see what happens. I'm in a group of background, and then, I keep getting picked for different featured stuff. When it happens once, you dismiss it. When it keeps happening over and over again, you're like, okay, you get a sense of what casting directors see in you and are likely to book you on. And so I started doing busking because I thought that was a direct route to actually getting paid for doing stand-up comedy. And it was. And I do a unique character with my Lieutenant Frank, the rainbow short tactical leg warmers and the short shorts. Mm-hmm. And that's been probably 80% of my income, I'd say, is the busking. But then last year, for some reason, I went in, updated my photos to Central. And then ever since September last year, I was working probably 1 to 2 days a week, regular every week, background work, booked on a bunch of different stuff. I wasn't exactly sure how or why. I was just grateful. Of course, that all stopped with the pandemic. But the way I look at it is, I don't see myself as just an actor. I see myself as an entertainer. So my thought was, how can I get paid to do what I won't literally kill myself doing? Because I've done sales, and I get how sales managers think they see a salesman in me. And I had to go through a decade or two of doing that to realize, no, this is not what I'm supposed to do. And if I keep doing this, I will kill myself, because it's just my body's screaming no. It's like my body is listening to Bill Hicks. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that Bill Hicks bit where he's like, hey, is there anybody in the audience in marketing? Kill yourselves. It's kind of interesting, to be a comic and have that in my head, and then also to be a working actor where, at some point you want to get booked on a commercial. And I'm literally talking to you, one of the experts in our industry on commercial acting. So it's a weird yin and yang. Mm-hmm. Because on the one hand, you want to get booked as an actor. You want to be, you want to have respect. You want to have, be seen as someone that is capable of doing the work. But on the other hand, you see, for example, what's going on with Amazon and the attempts of certain workers there to organize. And that's a really weird conversation to have, because, I'm picking up some items today at my mailbox that I got on Amazon. Some of my more recent podcast guests are actors who have content on Amazon streaming. Meanwhile, I see what's happening to the workers. And as a union worker, I look at these non-union workers and I empathize and I think, I wish they had some of the protections that I have as a union member. And I wish they had more. And, I wonder, it's a really difficult conversation to have. And then it makes me wonder, well, where, I'm in a certain position. Like I had a meltdown last week because I couldn't take it anymore, which apparently there's going to be more of that. The Scientific American magazine had an article a couple of weeks ago about how suicides are going to spike as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I know
I'm really concerned about the mental health of our members through all of this.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it was weird. In podcast last week, I stumbled on this and I just had a conversation with my Aunt Ellen, who happens to be a counselor. That's like her profession. And I said, well, Aunt Ellen, what do you think about this? Because I see how alcoholics are viewed in our culture. And they go like, hi, my name's Mark. I'm an alcoholic. And even if you've never been to AA and you're not an alcoholic yourself, you're culturally aware the same way you're culturally aware of like Robert De Niro or TikTok or Facebook. Like it's out there and everyone knows about it. When it comes to mental health, I can't say, hi, my name's Mark. I'm mentally ill. How can I help? Like I sprung that phrase of introduction onto my Aunt Ellen and she was like shocked. And I thought, yeah, we all are. Like, as I hear that, if I say my truth and I say, yes, I am mentally ill, I recognize that our culture has no bandwidth for that, or very little. And I know a lot of our members, they appear to be, because of this industry, may be very attractive. They may appear to be very articulate, very intelligent. And yet, inside their head, there's literally this battle going on for survival that nobody else can see. And if they were an alcoholic, I feel like there's a lot more cultural compassion.
Oh, I absolutely agree. One of the breakthroughs that I've had as an educator in this last year was organizing all of my curriculum into this paradigm that I have now, which is that there are only essentially 4 components that we need to be aware of to perform professionally. To really maximize our opportunities for success as performers. Those 4 buckets are, the first one is craft. We all know you have to know how to do the thing. So
right.
Everything that has to do with being able to tell stories professionally in as many mediums and genres and platforms, et cetera, like you got to know how to be a performer and tell stories in those various ways in order to have something to sell.
Right.
So if we think of our craft as, our artistry that we want to then put out into the world. Now, certainly there's a lot of really great artists out there who have no interest in making that their profession. It's a hobby. It's something they do for their own expression. They're not trying to make a living as performers. But let's say that you want to make a living as a performer. That brings you into the second component, which is the business. So the business is all things that we do as artists to monetize our art. So that could be getting representation to get us auditions for other people's stories, submitting ourselves to be able to get opportunities to help other people tell their stories. It could be building industry relationships with writers, directors, producers, showrunners, executives, et cetera, so that they can put us in things or develop projects with us. It could be creating our own content. It could be social media and crowdfunding and those types of things. So we have a variety of ways to monetize our art once we have something to sell.
Merchandise, what Disney does.
Yeah, right. So there's a variety of ways we can, monetize our art. But then you rub up against the third component, and that is the marketplace. And the marketplace is the value that the marketplace has for your art. That's why we have a union, because we can either go out as individuals and say, no, you can't pay me $10 for my performance. You need to pay me $500 for my performance. And then they'll say, well, no, we'll just not work with you and work with somebody else. But if enough of us band together and say, no, you have to pay all of us at least $500 or we're not going to give you our art, then they have to say, okay, well, let's sit at the table and let's discuss this. So the union, SAG-AFTRA, is the only union in the on-camera performer profession that is there to fight for our value in the marketplace. Because what good is, your art or your attempts to monetize it if you can't even make a living with it because the marketplace undervalues your art? So you have to have craft, you have to engage with the ways to monetize it, but you also have to fight for its value in the marketplace. And that's those first three components. But the fourth component is one that we cannot get around. It takes precedence over all three of those other ones. And that is our self-care. Because you have to take care of your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical well-being, because if you can't do that, then you can't perform your art. You can't monetize your art. You don't have as much value in the marketplace because you're not reliable. The key word is reliability. And so what I say about, our self-care is because, how many times are you going to keep buying this? What's that?
Dependability.
Right. I ask people all the time, what's a product that you buy? Now, if every time you bought it, it was defective, would you keep buying that product? And the answer, of course, is no. You know what I mean? Right. Some people would stop buying a product even after one defective product. But other people, if say I buy a box of Cheerios and it's full of like burnt O's, well, maybe I'll try it again because that might have been a freak coincidence. But, I buy 2 or 3 more boxes that are all burnt and maybe I'm going to move to a different type of cereal,
Sure.
So it's like that with our performances. Like if we prove ourselves to be inconsistent, if we're not reliable, if we can't show up and do our jobs, then the industry doesn't really have use for us. And so we have to be able to be reliable. There's I say it's on a spectrum between 0 and 100, where at 0, you're suicidal and can't even get out of bed. At the 100, you're a robot and you do everything perfectly. So neither of us are on the 0 or 100. We're all somewhere in between. But beyond a certain threshold, you at least are functional, even if you're not reliable. Like you can get out of bed, you can sometimes have a good audition, you can sometimes be prepared, you can sometimes you get your goals accomplished. But beyond another threshold, you become reliable, where despite your problems, despite your health issues and your family issues and your relationship issues and whatever, you can still show up on time where you need to be, fully prepared and ready to do your best work. And that's where we need to get to, is reliability. And so my entire curriculum and the way that I educate now is based around those 4 components. And then you can, explode out each of those to all the details of how we develop our craft, how we pursue monetizing it, how we engage with our union, and how we can take care of ourselves. And I don't know, it feels like just about everybody has mental health concerns or issues. So, but it is interesting the way you say it. Like, I would probably think twice before saying, hi, I am mentally ill, but I have no problem telling somebody I feel a little depressed. And so it's interesting that we can't call it what it is because of some stigma, whereas something like alcoholism, you can say it and people will have compassion and relate to it, et cetera, and they won't, so I definitely think, we need to change the perception of people being honest about their mental health challenges. It shouldn't be something that they feel they have to hide for fear of being stigmatized.
I like the 3-part element of it, where I introduce myself, I say my name, and then I say, instead of I am an alcoholic, I am mentally ill. And while people are trying to like deal with that, where they're going, oh, fuck, let's get out of here, I don't want to be around that guy. The last phrase kind of makes them even rip their head off and go, oh, I got to reevaluate everything. When I say in a cheerful voice, as my voice goes up, like I'm a Disney character, inviting you to Disneyland, I go, how can I help? And people are like, oh, wait. You're mentally ill. That means you're like a smelly, dirty, criminal, homeless person I need to run away from. But you're offering help and you're smiling? That doesn't make sense. It's a cognitive dissonance. And culturally, we have this disconnect. I was in a major retailer the other day, and there was this section with like the teen girls' clothes, and there was this advertising poster. And I think a lot of people, when they look at that, they would say that the actor who's in that photo, this wonderful smiling girl, it appears that she might have a certain type of mental health issue. I'll just leave it at that. Let people's imaginations go where they might. And I think that's a nice start, but there's this lack of representation in accepted leadership, active professional culture where we recognize people who, wear their mental illness on their sleeve the way an alcoholic can.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's really interesting. See, I'm in a weird spot. I have nothing to lose because I've been living under the poverty line for the last decade in LA, stumbling distance for where they hand out the Academy Awards. I found a way to do that because I realized a decade ago, I can't do the professions that would give me money immediately, like sales. It's not healthy for me. So I found something that worked, but I just lost my thought with that.
No, but I mean, I can just to finish up on that topic, just about every person that I know and love, they're not insane, but they have mental health issues in and around their body image and around their eating disorders, maybe weight issues and self-image issues, or
which is a mental health or mental illness issue. It's just when you hear it as mental illness, it's
I think there has to be a differentiation between the understandable and relatable mental issues that we are all dealing with to some lesser or more degree, to people who are actually, insane and need clinical help in a much more extreme fashion, which I think when you hear the term mentally ill, at least for me, it conjures up images of like the loony bin, but like,
I think all of us have that or immediate reaction. And that's where I'm like,
that's not right. Yeah.
Why don't we have that when we hear alcoholic?
Right. And so that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. But, again, that's part of why I include that mental health is such an important part of our self-care as performers, because it's such a big thing, man. I mean, for so many performers, I'm sure many people listening to this, it's like they are their own worst enemies. It's not an issue of their craft. It's not an issue of their, work ethic. It's literally their own mental health, their self-doubt, their, self-sabotage. That is what's in their way.
Absolutely. Hey, now, we're almost an hour in here, and I really need to jump on what I call your two manifestos.
Let's jump in.
One was dropped last year, and that was your SAG-AFTRA election campaign literature, my brutally honest report from inside our union's leadership. And to give some reference here for folks, our union was having an election for president, among other national and also local offices. And so there was a few candidates. There's a lot of, much as in national political politics, with the President of the United States and Congress and Senate and all that sort of thing. We were having our thing within our union last year. So can you share a little bit about what that brutally honest report from you was, why you did it, why you feel compelled? Because that was really kind of like the beginning of your expression of what you have found about how our union operates, right?
Yeah, I think, but I would say that's the second communication, and the one that I put out last month or a couple weeks ago was the third. So we have to actually back up.
Okay.
We have to back up to 2017. So in the spring of 2017 is when I was first invited by the two existing political factions of our union's leadership in Los Angeles.
Which are?
Well, one of them is called Unite for Strength, and it was the political party that wanted to merge the unions and succeeded doing so in that concluded in 2012 with the merger of SAG and AFTRA. And that's the political party that Gabrielle Carteris is a member of, that's still in control of our national leadership. So they've been in power for about 12 years. And then there's another group in Los Angeles called Membership First that came out of a group called Performers Alliance that was behind the efforts to institute Global Rule 1 and to that was also empowered during the early 2000s for the commercial strike of 2000, as well as a couple of attempts to merge the unions. The second one, which actually succeeded, was after Membership First was voted out of power in 2008. So those are the two. Those are two. Like,
hey, Shaan?
Yeah.
For our listeners, what is SAG-AFTRA's Global Rule 1?
Yeah, Global Rule 1 just means, anywhere you work in the world, you have to work under a SAG-AFTRA contract. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can't work on any kind of project that's under SAG-AFTRA jurisdiction unless you're working under a union contract.
No contract, no work.
That's right. So anyway, in 2017 in the spring, I was approached by leaders of both of those political factions here in Los Angeles, saying they would love for me to run for the board of directors with their what we call slates, which means the way you essentially campaign for elected position in Los Angeles is to be on a pamphlet or in a group email that's paid for by one of these groups, because it's very expensive. It costs almost $8,000 to send an email to every member of the union. It also costs tens of thousands to print up like pamphlets to send to every member through the mail. And other than that,
why is the email cost money?
That's a great question for our leadership, and I've been opposed to that. And because it's in our union, it's that way. It doesn't cost that in other entertainment unions where they charge just a flat fee so that it doesn't disenfranchise people from being able to have their voices heard. But in our union, it costs so much money just to send an email.
So you're basically buying an email list. Is that what it is?
No, you can't, because you don't get to see it. Essentially, you're basically paying to have a third-party vendor that our union has contracted send it to the list so that the list stays private. So you don't get access to anybody's emails, but they do send it out to the entire list. There's also big problems with that system because apparently the guidelines that iContact is following were established in 2004. You can't get metrics to see how many people actually read your email or opened it, or how many people went to spam for. They won't give you guidelines to make sure it doesn't go to spam because you wrote too much or included one too many links or whatever. It's a big mess. But the point is, It takes a lot of money to run for elected office in the union. So most people gather together in groups and share that expense as part of a political faction or a slate. And so that's why not a single independent person was elected to any position in the last few elections.
Wow.
Unless you want to call Jane Austen independent because she did run on her own after leaving membership first, which was her political party for 20 years, but then she ran on her own both for president and for local president. So I think Jane is the one exception to that. But even down to delegate, not a single person who didn't run on a slate was elected. And that's exactly what I was told in 2017. Not only was I approached by these two different political parties, I was like, why are there parties? So it started like a.
That was my impression too when I first became aware of parties within the. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, just think of the way that sounds: a political division within a union.
Oh, Shaan, did I lose you?
That doesn't even make sense.
Sorry, there's a little burp with the internet connection.
No, just saying, just think of that phrase, like a political division within a union. That's like a nonsensical statement.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
It's like, which side is management, right?
Well, so maybe, but I was, but there's cliques in high school, and it has nothing to do with one side being aligned with the teachers or the principal or something. It's just
but more than two.
Right. But there's just there's this tribal mentality. But the point is, I spent 6 months talking to as many people as I could about why these parties existed. And I also found those parties to be in a constant state of gridlock and conflict with each other, which was really holding up the progress of the union because you couldn't get stuff done in the boardroom because if it came from them and you don't like them, you're going to vote it down. And it didn't matter. It was just, It was weird. So I wrote a letter in 2017 to the members. It came out at the end of August, which was when most of the voting was already done. But I just wanted to share with people my experience in running for the boards and the fact that there were these parties and that it made me sad. And I wanted people to be aware of it so that we could start to come up with solutions on how to bridge the divide and get rid of those parties. So that was really my first letter to the members was in the summer of 2017.
Okay.
Then that fall, I ended up being appointed to my local board seat by Jane Austen's husband, Kurt Lott, who got hired on a bunch of, Avatar and Battle Angel movies with James Cameron. Nice. And so even though I lost my bid for election by 6 votes, I was the first runner-up, number 42 out of, the first 41 get elected, and I came in number 42. And then we have this weird, completely corrupt practice in our LA local. This isn't even how it works in any of our other locals. We have 24 other locals, which is the states of our union, like Arizona, Utah, Colorado, San Diego, Northern California.
When I was in Vegas for about 2 years. Yeah,
we have 50 states. We have 50 states in the United States. We have 25 locals in SAG-AFTRA, and so not in a single other local do they have this policy where somebody can run for office and then immediately resign and choose who to give their seat to. And so it is allowed this corrupt practice where these political parties will run the most famous people who then immediately resign and give their seats to party insiders who can't get elected.
Classic bait and switch.
Classic bait and switch. Why even have a democracy if that's the way things are going to work?
Because you're not voting for the candidate. You're voting for the candidate chooser. Yeah.
You're basically voting for that political faction to divvy up the seats however they think best for their own purposes. And that's completely a corrupt and indefensible system. Although, Gabrielle and her political inner circle will try to defend that practice because they instituted it in 2014 in LA. So they created it and they have been using that ever since. And
interesting.
I go into that in my letters. But the point is
6 years old, that rule.
Yeah, 6 years. That's it. And so I entered the boardroom that way. I was, passed over about a dozen times with people resigning and giving their seats away. And then finally, Kurt gave his seat to me, which was such a blessing. And it was based on the relationship I had with Jane working to revitalize the conservatory in LA for a couple of years.
Right.
And so I got the chance not only to serve in the local boardroom, but I was also a part of almost every national board meeting serving as an alternate, which means when a national board member can't attend, they can actually choose a local board member to fill in for them. And so I was chosen, I think, 6 or 7 times to fill in. So I got the opportunity to serve both at the local board of directors level and the national board of directors level.
Right.
And I was on both local committees and national committees. Plus, I was also a part of grassroots efforts, including Union Working, which is like this nonpartisan.
Sean's pointing to his hat right now. He's wearing a Union Working hat.
Yeah, this amazing group of that's nonpartisan, non-political, just trying to focus on supporting our union with grassroots organizing and community building and talking to people. And they were instrumental in the commercial contract that we just got negotiated last summer. So I've been very heavily involved. So the letter you're talking about, the one that you say my first manifesto, the one that came out last year around the election time,
is really the second.
That was the second. That was my follow-up report. That was like, okay, 2 years ago, you guys, I told you there were these political parties and that it's pretty messed up. Right. Now, after being in leadership for 2 years, I'm telling you what I found are the major issues that are affecting our union. And I also provided potential solutions for each of those issues. So it wasn't my intention just to complain. I also wanted to offer solutions about it. And so that particular letter I sent to every LA member, and it was also listened to. I provided it as an audio file so people could listen to most of it as a audio recording. It makes it easier for people to just put it on in the car, on a hike or whatever, doing chores. And so somewhere around 15 to 20,000 members listened to that or read that. And it either did or it's regarded to have really impacted the election results, because as a result of the elections, just about every one of Gabrielle's political party members in Los Angeles were not elected. And so, which is something that I called for in my letter, was to say, hey, we really should vote these people out because they're holding us back, and it's a corrupt practice that they take advantage of. But I also said they're probably going to get put back in anyway because of this corrupt system. So even if you vote them out, look to see them being installed anyway. And that's exactly what happened. So this letter I put out a couple weeks ago basically updates people on what happened since the election. It talks about, what happened in the election, what happened in the national board meetings afterwards, where all the national committees were put together. It talks about convention and how that was abused. And then it talks about what has happened in our union since this COVID-19 crisis has broken out, which is an absolute shock and nightmare, because, and I could not object more strongly to how this union is being led at the time when we need our local leaders, when we need community, when we need help from our union. It's all being denied to us, and it's so it's sickening. It's truly a sickening experience. So yeah, this my first letter was, hey guys, there's a problem. 2 years later, it's like, okay, from being inside for 2 years, here's the update, and here's all the problems that I found. And then now it's like, okay, you guys voted for change. We all came together and made a big change in Los Angeles where, Unite for Strength lost control of the local boardroom for the first time in a dozen years. And now we have new leadership in LA that has the opportunity to show whether they can be any more successful. In response, Gabrielle has spent the last 8 months punishing the LA local for voting her people out, installing all of her people anyway, and now suspending the democracy of our union so that she can run this union almost single-handedly without any accountability. And it's
explain that a little bit, Shaan. First of all, isn't it true that the LA local didn't even have office space? What happened to that office space on Wilshire, where we rent? We don't own it. We rent, and apparently there's no AC on the weekend, so you can't do stuff on the weekend. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, so the long and the short of it is, we used to have under SAG what we called branches, and in AFTRA they had what they called locals. And when we merged, we took that name local from AFTRA. So now all of the different branches of our union are called locals.
Right.
And what used to be called the Hollywood branch of SAG is now the Los Angeles local. And so we have a total of 25 locals or jurisdictions for our union nationwide. 10 of them don't have any office space at all. So they don't have a office for staff. They don't have a place where the members can go and meet. It's literally just a territory without any office
I remember Nevada being like that. I think we had a meeting.
Nevada doesn't have an office. Colorado doesn't have an office. Arizona, Utah doesn't. There's 10 of them that don't have any local office space at all. But Los Angeles has our national headquarters building, which is the one on Wilshire. It's over 160,000 square feet. Los Angeles is a local. We have local staff. We have a local board and presidents, just like any other local. And yet we don't even have our own office space and even one room that we can call our own to be able to use for our programming, our committees, or anything. And part of why I think that happened is because since Gabrielle's political party, Unite for Strength, came into power in 2008 when Ken Howard was elected president,
right,
that they controlled not only the national governments of our union, they also controlled the local governance of our union. So their interests were always aligned. So they didn't really see a difference between the national leadership and the local leadership of the LA local because they controlled both. So who cares whether it's local space or national space? We control it all, so who cares?
It'd be like the president of the United States making decisions as if he was the governor of a particular state.
Exactly. It's exactly right. As if the national governance of our union, of our country, was in, say, the state of California, then it's like, who cares if it's California space or United States space? It's all the same thing. We're in control of both. Who really cares? So let's just say it's all United States space. California doesn't need its own thing because we are California too. So what ended up happening though now is now that there is different leadership in Los Angeles that may not agree with what's happening nationally, it suddenly becomes very important that we have our own private spaces to do our own thing, because the national government of our union, if it's hostile towards the Los Angeles local, can suddenly shut us out from being able to have any meetings or use any space for any of our local organizing. So there's a real important reason why, you have governors of states that control their states, and then you have a national president in Washington, D.C., because sometimes the state of California might disagree with what our president wants to do. Sometimes the state of Minnesota might disagree with what the president wants to do. And it's important for us to have that kind of autonomy to serve our members, because the national president of our union is responsible for the overall union, but it's the locals that are responsible for serving their members. And sometimes the needs of California, or let's say, sometimes the needs of a Los Angeles member are different than a New York member or whatever.
I can personally testify to that as a SAG-AFTRA member who's worked in two different locals. I can tell you, there's a enormous galactic difference between the Nevada local and the Los Angeles local. Like night and day, could not be more different. So to lump them all in the same thing, it's like, why have locals at all? Just make it all national,
Absolutely. So right now, even though, one party, let's say, controlled both the Los Angeles local and the national government of our union for the last dozen years, now that it no longer controls LA, it's important for LA to be able to meet without it being under the thumb of the national governance. And it wouldn't be such a big deal if the national governance was nonpartisan and was really supportive of the locals and what they wanted to do, and was supporting them and talking to them. Instead, what we've seen is very punitive national leadership that since Gabrielle's political party was essentially removed from power in LA, they're like, okay, now we're going to reduce LA as much as we can so that they, in other words, almost punishing the members of this local for not supporting them in the last election. And that is the least, that's the least, I don't know. It's such bad leadership. It's so mean. It's so disrespectful of the wishes of the voters. It's like what we're witnessing on a national level, where we're seeing, like, unless a state is willing to do whatever the president says, that they're having resources taken away from them. They're being insulted. They're being their budgets are being threatened. It's like gangsterism. It's weird.
Yeah, it's so disappointing because as a member who I grew up very religious, very conservative. I remember, I could write articles. Like, I was on a track to go into conservative politics as a profession. I published a newspaper when I was in college, an independent newspaper. It's really weird because I see both sides. It's like, now I'm this card-carrying, proud member of a labor union, the one that's, it's got Alec Baldwin in it. And I remember when I would used to, lambaste Alec Baldwin because he was this left-wing liberal. Now he's my fellow union member. I've never met the man, but it's like, I'm a huge admirer of his work. And it's interesting. So it's like, I've been in both camps. I can make both arguments. And it's not a binary thing.
I don't identify with a political party. I don't identify with the political party just in United States politics. I consider myself, an independent and more of a libertarian than anything else. But then when it comes to our union, I certainly don't identify with the political party. But something interesting is that there's at least one political party that is willing to invite me to participate and will listen to me and my ideas and help me work through them and support good ones and counsel me when they think I don't have a good idea. And that's this membership first political party that has also ran me on their slate for the last 2 years, knowing that I'm a nonpartisan person, but to help me stay in leadership. Right. It's been really sweet. It's been really awesome. And I have reached out to people of Gabrielle's party countless times, Gabrielle herself many times, and they refuse to engage in conversation about anything. And so being shut out, it's too bad because it contributes to the divisiveness and the gulf between trying to find a common ground or an understanding. And so I wish putting out communications like I have been doing were not necessary. It's not fun for me to spend 6 weeks during the once in a lifetime pandemic crisis, feverishly researching and writing a letter to update the members. I would prefer to not have something like that to have to report to the members. I would rather focus my time on supporting our members through great programming, but we're not allowed to do anything right now because of the way Gabrielle has chosen to run our union.
And it's frustrating because not only are there issues within our union that, yet to be addressed, like, when other unions own their headquarters, why do we pay rent? And especially,
the excuse is going to be given that, like, oh, we couldn't find the right building. I mean, we're in the largest metropolitan area, probably in the United States, and yet we
if
can't.
Only we knew some celebrities that maybe had an inn somewhere, right?
It's like, I mean, I wasn't in leadership at the time those decisions were made to choose this building and to choose to spend over $6 million in rent and $700,000 in parking and all that stuff. Like, the Actors Equity recently purchased their own building and even paid for a lot of improvements and stuff. It's every other entertainment union seems to recognize that $6 million a year that we're spending could be better used in building equity or paying off our building so that we can then tap it in times of need and put that money towards our programming, towards our organizing efforts, towards helping our members during financial crises like what's going on right now. So it doesn't make any sense. And
it's interesting how because I spent a decade in Michigan and I was in sales. I would talk to homeowners who, in the greater Detroit area, they worked for either Ford, GM, or Chrysler. And they were, more often than not, they were union employees and they owned their home.
Mm-hmm.
And these were not like, wealthy executives. These were blue collar people who maybe barely, graduated from high school and they were working on the assembly line, but they had, this union job and it afforded them this, not lavish, but, adequate middle class lifestyle. They were able to, buy their own home. They owned real estate. The only reason I knew them is because I was in the mortgage business and I was helping them with their financing of the real estate that they owned. So to come from that background and to see, there's so much amped up expectations when you talk about our union, about the members and what, the work that we do. I mean, it's so iconic. And to find out that we of all the unions on the planet, we're the union of Alec Baldwin and, Gwyneth Paltrow is renting the headquarters.
Right. That's right.
Like Sally Field has this iconic, moment in the film Norma Ray in 1979. And right now, as I describe it, maybe listeners don't, get the reference. But if you see the image of a young Sally Field holding up this sign that in capital letters says union, now you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that iconic thing, Sally Field is a member of our union. I've never actually met her, but I did. I stood in for someone on the old show Brothers and Sisters. So I actually got to sit next to Sally Field as they were setting up the camera because, she dismissed her stand-in and she just sat there, did some knitting and talked to her assistants and got some other work done. And it was like one of the best moments of my life, just sitting next to Sally Field, who I remembered from Smoking the Bandit. And I was just having this amazing moment. But it's like that's the power that we have. Why is that power not being used to help our fellow, as you mentioned earlier, Shaan, you see not just union workers, but you see this larger pool of non-union workers who have the exact same issues and also need help. And why can't we all band together and help each other? I mean, I think of how, there's all this, especially in the commercial acting field, so much non-union work that we let the Fortune 500 companies that are signatories to our SAG-AFTRA contracts, they violate the contract they signed. They go and hire all this non-union work at a cheaper rate, and they drive the prices down. You've got influencers on YouTube and the whole rise of that. And, how is YouTube treating them? And there's a bunch of issues that, some of them are starting to grapple with. And what's their representation? And has our union and our industry even, contended with what is new media? What are influencers? What's the difference? What kind of protections, if any, are any afforded? Is there any commonality here? Because it just seems like our union is falling behind the technology. And meanwhile, you have, Ralph's last week, the Kroger grocery concern here in LA, they refused to comply with the grocery workers' union demands to COVID test the employees. Ralph said, no, we're not going to do that. So where's our fellow members, locking arms with our sister and brother union members, with the grocery store workers, saying, hey, Ralph's, do the right thing. COVID test your employees. It's a basic safety thing. There's a 60 Minutes story just on May 10th where they interviewed a guy representing Amazon. They're talking about the various Amazon employees attempting to unionize and how Amazon was demonizing some of those leaders attempting to organize. We've got our own stuff in our own house to deal with, but there's this bigger global issue. And especially now with the pandemic, we're realizing, another person's healthcare is not their issue. It's my issue. I might die if everyone doesn't have basic healthcare. If everyone doesn't have a basic income, really bad things happen to me too, regardless of my economic status.
Well, I think part of the problem is, and just to comment on something you said even before that, is one thing that I heard somewhere, I can't remember who told it to me, is that it's very easy to spend other people's money. And I think our union has had millions and millions of dollars of member earnings coming in to just play with as they saw fit. And instead of really being smart and investing that in our own building and helping our members be as successful as they could possibly be, they've spent it in such irresponsible ways. And kind of like imagining that they keep selling off our chairs. We're playing a game of musical chairs and they keep selling off our chairs, and then the music stops and people are like, I don't have a chair. Where happened to all of our chairs? We had so much money. We're the most prestigious entertainment union in the world, and we don't have chairs for our members. Like that doesn't make any sense. But I think part of the issue too is that our members have been so poorly educated when they joined this union that they don't even know what they're a part of. They don't even know what a union is. Yeah, so many of our members really think of their membership in this union as something they were forced to do to pursue their dreams. Like, I had to join. I was a must join. I couldn't take this job unless I paid $3,000 to. It's almost like I had to pay $3,000 just to do what I love doing at a high level. They don't see it as, my God, did I get a chance to join this incredible labor organization that is going to fight for my value, that when they call me, I'm going to be there, that, the leaders of this union are going to do everything they can to help me be successful, because the more successful more of us are, the more power we have as a union. People don't think like that because they weren't trained to even know what their responsibilities are as members, or how our governance works, and what committees are, and like why we should show up and picket, or who our sister guilds are, or the union literacy of our membership is very low. And so what we need to do is we need to provide value to our members so that they can't wait to join this union. And we need to make sure that they're onboarded in a way where they really understand what they're a part of. And then they will show up where they need to show up because we've contributed such clear value to their lives. But if we're not providing value to their lives, then a lot of them are like, what do I care? I get a few screeners a year. I don't care about voting. Like, who cares? Like, whatever. Just they're just waiting for their audition that's going to help them, move their career forward. And SAG-AFTRA is an afterthought. And what has happened for me in the last 4 years is SAG-AFTRA has become a central pillar of my own strategy for how I'm going to succeed as a performer, which is by being of service to the Alec Baldwins and the Sally Fields and the Marks and the anybody. Like I distinguish to myself that if I can be of use to my creative community, that will only have positive impacts on my own personal career. And I've seen that to be true. And not only have I seen that to be true, I've learned how powerful our union could be if it was led well.
Right? It's amazing. All the missed opportunities. It literally blows my mind.
It's a failure of leadership that you and I don't, and every other member of this union doesn't wake up every day and being like, gosh, how is SAG-AFTRA going to help me succeed as a performer today? I'm so excited. I can't wait to go to this event where I'm going to meet casting directors, or go to this event where I'm going to meet directors, or this event where I'm going to work with writers, or this event where I'm going to get representation that's been vetted by the union and is part of their franchise agreement. So I know I'm not getting screwed. And, they're going to help me learn from some of my favorite performers in film and TV. So here I saw The Rock on this movie. Tomorrow he's teaching me how to, cold read in a class. It's like, that's the kind of union we could be.
Well, it's interesting too that, if an argument's made that, we're not the UAW, we can't help you get a job at Ford. It's like, well, nobody's expecting that. I mean, some people are, I know, but, realistically, it's about the right access to the casting directors to have your shot to audition. And right now you have private companies that compete against each other for that access. And it's like, if you have representation, you get the cream of the crop access. If you don't have representation, you have to pay a monthly fee to one of these different competing private concerns. And it's like, why isn't SAG-AFTRA as the union, the clearinghouse for all of these opportunities? It's not guaranteeing you work, It's just the fair arbiter of the access to the opportunities. And then the
100%.
casting directors are going to make their decisions, you know?
And what our members don't know is that the casting directors are trying and have tried to bring that to us. Our own union has stood in the way and prevented them from coming in. I spent 6 months. I spent 6 months working with a friend of mine named Jessica Gardner, who's a member, with the Artistic Development Committee of the CSA, which is 3 casting directors, Jason Kennedy, Lisa Zambetti, Caroline Liam. And we worked for 6 months on putting together a whole training program where CSA members could come into our union and teach really intimate, awesome classes to our members, and asking for a very reasonable honorarium, which the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, which is a separate company, pays them anyway. And we have not been able to make progress on getting that instituted, which is just a huge loss to our members when the best casting directors in the business are begging to come and teach our members, and we won't even take them up on that offer. So there's something wrong with the way our union is operating. If our members were aware that this exists and it was something that we are trying to do and they have not been allowed to have access to this, if I was a member, I'd be really concerned about a union that prevents us from being able to meet and work with these top casting directors. Because this isn't just some fly-by-night casting director. This is the freaking CSA we're talking about. But the other part about that is like, okay, you can sit there in the past and say, well, it's not our job to get members work. Okay, so then 3 companies have a monopoly on how we get employed online: Casting Frontier, Casting Networks, and Actors Access. Are you saying it's better to have these outside for-profit companies have a monopoly over whether our members get employed or not? And you're just going to still defend that idea that if that's what it is, that's what it is. It's not our job to protect members by helping them be safe when they're getting employed. They're not concerned about the private information of our members on these platforms that can be used without our permission in all kinds of terrible ways. It's the way our union has interacted with technology is an absolute disappointment. And I say in my letter last year, the one that I sent around the election, that some of our senior staff were not even aware of Casting Frontier, Casting Networks, and Actors Access until the 2018?
What?
Yeah, they weren't even aware of how they worked, what they did. No, I mean, that's how disconnected our leadership can be when you've got bad member leadership. When you don't have leadership, member leaders who are in the trenches, who know what it's like to try to get work in this day and age. And that's also why we need more members like you and others listening to this. You might say, well, who am I to get involved in the union? It's like, if you don't, your staff don't know how things work. Because the people in leadership, if they're all just like people who were successful decades ago or people who worked decades ago, they're not out there dealing with the online casting services and the way that we are trying to get work today. So you can't expect them to tell our staff that. They don't know. It's like, when's the last time Gabrielle Cartera submitted herself on Actors Access? Never. So of course she doesn't know to tell our staff to be aware of that. You know what I mean? So
there is the conversation that we've yet to have as a union to recognize the, and this could be fraught with some issues, I'm sure, but just, some kind of acknowledgement of the different tiers, there's a difference between a working actor who's just starting out. There's someone who's like, what you call a journeyman. He's got, a few dozen credits in different things, theatrical, commercial, what have you. And then someone who's like an iconic name. Just use the first name. The entire globe knows exactly who you're talking about. We need to have an honest conversation about that and recognize, okay, there's some strengths, there's some weaknesses here between our various members.
Well, I think the first thing our members need to understand is that the biggest names in our union, the biggest performers, global sensations and icons, they're the ones that should be running this union. Because they have the clout to sit across from the producers and really advocate for everyone's best interests, because they're invulnerable to attack. It doesn't matter. You can't blacklist or threaten The Rock's career or Tom Hanks's career or George Clooney's career. They're going to be successful because of their global brand, regardless of anyone, having a problem with their leadership of a union. And so we need those people. The problem that we're running into is that so many of them identify as producers first now and actors second. So they're
explain
actually
that for a second.
Yeah, well, like when you get to a certain point of success where you can produce your own projects as vehicles for yourself and others and to make a living in that way, some of those performers have changed their, let's say, loyalty or identification from that of putting the needs of their fellow artists and union members first to putting, of course, the profits of their enterprise first. And so they become almost like business people first and artists second. So you might think, hey, I'm in a union with blah, 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 blah. But what you don't realize is that they actually are sitting on the opposing table during negotiations. They actually are advocating against what our union wants because they have their producer hat on instead of their actor hat on. And I found that very difficult to grapple with because I feel like the camaraderie we have as artists when we're on a show together or at auditions together or in class together, we love each other, we take care of each other, we support each other. What is the threshold that gets crossed where somebody says, okay, up until this point, I really cared about my fellow brothers and sisters in this union and in this community, but now the people I really care about are the other producers. How do we save every penny we can on costs? How do we hold back other members of SAG-AFTRA from achieving what I have been able to achieve in my own career? I don't understand what that threshold is other than it's just human nature and greed and, profit, whatever. And so what my hope is that we can not only remind those successful performers how important they are to our union and how important they are to our own chances at having a life, anything close to resembling what they've been blessed to experience. We need them. We need them in leadership. We need them to identify with us and we need them to lead on our behalf because we're not safe unless they're part of it. And then the other journeyman actors in this union, people who are consistently working, and then the aspirational category of our members who are aspiring to have careers. They make up the 95% of the membership. I mean, I tell people all the time, less than 83% of our members qualify for, what is it? Like 83% of our members don't qualify for health insurance. I'm
one of those 83. And
most people are.
I won't have more work for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So even if I was, let's say, $500 away from qualifying, I know for a fact I'm not going to earn $500 between now and December 31st. I mean, maybe I do. I'll be grateful for it. But, as someone who's trying to survive, I have to plan as if I will not earn that $500, which is is either a couple of days doing background work on a theatrical, or it could be one good day, it's background,
Well, how much we're getting paid has been decimated over the last 20 years. I mean, I was talking recently to one of our former presidents of the Screen Actors Guild, a guy named Alan Rosenberg, and it was such an honor to be able to talk to him. And he reminded me because he was saying, like the whole term of top of show being like a top of show guest star.
Yeah.
Like it was such a fun thing when I booked my first top of show guest star on a show called SEAL Team on CBS.
Oh wow.
And I was like, wow, $9,000 for an episode. Woo-wee, But then he reminded me, he said, you know what we call it in the contract? It's called major role minimum. He's like, back in the day, you'd get paid $50,000 an episode. And now you're happy just to get $9,000, so
amazing.
Everybody's pay has just been chopped down. Producers don't want to pay us a penny more than we can absolutely stand. They don't want to, pay us for any days that we're not on set. They want to hold us forever and pay us for none of that time. I mean, there's just an assault on us left and right. And we need the most powerful members among us to be in leadership to push back. And you know what has driven so many of those high profile people out of leading this union is the kind of shitty politics that I try to shed light on in my letters. That if it wasn't for this kind of divisiveness, this kind of fighting amongst ourselves as opposed to pooling our brilliance together, we would have more high-profile members in leadership.
Shaan, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you uncover that there was a type of audition that actors do on a regular basis that because of the language of agreements that have already been signed, you should get paid for those auditions?
Yeah, just about every audition you've ever had for network TV or studio features. Anything that is... right now, we are renegotiating our TV theatrical contract with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, or what we call the AMPTP, right?
Right.
We're currently
Management.
in negotiations with them.
For us.
And they represent virtually all the studios and networks and everything.
Right.
So every time you've had an audition for one of those projects, which is, like I said, virtually all network TV and studio features, et cetera, we have a 814-page contract. And in Schedule A, it is. And that's why nobody ever has read it.
Right.
And
even
so,
one page.
But I'll tell you what comes up when you actually read the dang thing. You find some really amazing stuff. For an example, what you just brought up. Yes, in my last letter, I said, if you go to page 251 of our contract, it describes auditions, what we call auditions,
right?
In two sections. It's section 14 and 15 of Schedule A. And in section 14, it describes what an interview is, or what we would call like a general. But like an interview is when they bring you in to meet with you. You're not asked to prepare any material ahead of time, and you're not recorded in any way. It's just like, hey, come on down and meet with me. I might give you some pages to read cold with me, but I just want to meet you and talk to you. That's an interview. And so that kind of appointment is non-paid. You don't get paid for that.
Right.
But most of us get sides and audition material,
right?
And we are recorded when we go to these auditions.
We're working.
That's right. Every single one of those, if you are not hired, so if you don't book the job, you're still entitled to a half session fee for the audition, which at this point is over $500, which means like, there's got to be, 50, 60 grand that I'm owed that I never knew I was entitled to under the contract that we already have and have agreed to. And it goes back to the 60s. This thing has been around in our contract longer than most of us have been alive. And yet the only thing is we don't enforce it. Our members don't know about it, and we don't enforce it. But you can imagine how the stars of the day who founded our union were like, hey, if you don't just get to commission an artist to create art for you for free, like if you want me to take all the time to create a performance, do hair and makeup, drive across town, and you're going to record me, and you're going to have a record of my performance. Okay, that's an audition or a test. It's worth something. Yeah. And especially since only one of the however many people you see is going to book the job. The rest of us are just supposed to chalk all that time off as like, well, that's just the cost of being an actor. I mean, that's what it's become for us today, which is just unlimited hours lost with no compensation, just trying to book that one job. Whereas in the past, it was like, no, you're going to get paid and respected as an artist just for the honor of seeing you come in and audition for us and prepare material. We're going to do you that little bit of respect to say, if it's going to take you a freaking whole day to prepare this material to come and meet with us, let's take care of you for that. How much does that help put you at ease? How much does that create a spirit of collaboration and respect between you and the production? And, it's so beautiful. What a beautiful concept that we've not been enforcing for so long.
It's jaw-dropping.
And it's already agreed to. Every member of this union has a valid claim under this agreed to provision of our contract. And so I'm not saying...
You've been paying for it with your dues. We've been paying for it every year with our dues, and it's money 100%. On the table that we didn't even know was... Right. We didn't know the money was there. We didn't know the table was there.
Yeah, and when they are asking us to self-tape, I mean, absolutely we should have something like this in place, which means like if you're going to ask me to spend a whole day not just preparing the material, but now I've got to be the lighting tech and the DP, and I've got to edit, and I've got to do all this other stuff.
Maybe we should join IATSE as well, right?
If I deserved pay before, now I really deserve pay, because now you don't even have to pay for the cost of a casting. You're just having me do it all at home.
For the listeners who might not know what IATSE is, it's essentially most of the crew. If you see a TV or film production, the people who are quote behind the camera, setting up lighting, people like gaffers, best boy, weird words like that. They belong to IATSE. That's their union. Well, Shaan, I think we could talk another hour and a half, if not like months and years on this, but I feel like this is a really good kind of 101. Hopefully maybe a wake-up call for some fellow members. And I understand that some people listening to this, maybe didn't vote the way that you voted, Shaan, in the last election, or that I voted. But I I hope that enough specific issues here have been touched on that would cause someone to maybe get a little more curious and maybe want to start more of a discovery process about, your union that you pay dues in, or if you're a must join and you're wondering if you should join, understanding some of the bigger issues that are at stake here because you haven't joined the dance yet. And for those of you who would love to have the opportunity to join, understand what's going on in the battles that are being waged. Shaan, what can people do? We'll have links to your website, different things like that. And I think your first two manifestos were kind of highlighted and linked in your Medium article, which we'll have a link to, which is your third manifesto, which kind of is the final stopping point. But what would you recommend to someone if they hear this podcast and they go, I should probably look into this. I maybe don't necessarily agree with everything, but I've got some questions. What would you suggest they might consider doing?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to just read those 3 letters that I put out, the 2017, the 2019, and then this one in April of 2020, just so that you are aware of some of the terminology and some of the issues that I raise, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. Just to be aware of, let's say, what's the checklist of things that you should look into? Well, those letters will really open your eyes about a lot of different topics of concern. And then beyond that, to do your own research, talk to your elected representatives. You can reach out to them. I am available for anybody to reach out to me on social media or via email to challenge me on anything that I said, ask me my point of view. I'm happy to talk with you on the phone or do anything like this. Like I can stand by what I've put out there because I put so much time into making sure that I can support what it is that I assert. So by all means, I am an open book and happy to talk to anybody. I think it's our duty to look into these things, especially if this is really your passion, is to be a professional performer. Well, your union is a big part of that, and it can do a lot more to serve you. So I hope this makes you curious. And I also say, I always say, listen, I do not ask anybody to take me on faith alone. What I say is my own opinion. It's based on my own experience. I've been very involved, so I think my position has credibility.
You really have.
And so, but if anybody has walked, the same journey that I have, I'm convinced that they would see and feel the same way that I do. And so, but I leave that to every member to decide. And then if there's a email list that I have put together just for SAG-AFTRA information. So it's not to do anything other than send out things like these letters that are updating people on things.
Right.
And
I'm on that list.
Yeah, that email list is I just made ShaanSharma.com point to that email list. So if you just go to ShaanSharma.com, it's not going to take you to my website. It's going to take you to a sign up for this SAG-AFTRA information only email list. And that way, I hopefully someday don't have to spend thousands of dollars just to send out a communication to my brothers and sisters who want to hear from me.
Yeah, right. It's like we all have to build our own empires. That's why I call this Mark Roman Empire. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, ha ha. I'm an entertainer. This is for entertainment purposes only. But when you see what's going on, it sometimes feels like there's no middle ground. There's barely survival, and then there's building an empire just to continue that survival. Because if you do any less, you just get squashed. It's that's why there's unions in the first place. Is because companies and business owners, and not to say they're all evil and awful. I've owned businesses myself, but enough of them have been awful. That's why unions started in the first place. Without a union, there'd be no weekend. Without a union, there'd be no 40-hour work week. Without a union, there'd be no that's where minimum wage came from. I mean, it's just like we like to think the best of everyone, but at a certain point when the facts contravene that, it's up to us to organize together. Something you said, Shaan, that really resonated with me at one of either the workshops you taught at, or maybe it was union working. You really said, look, don't imagine the union is like these celebrities out there. This is your union, and you get to do what you will with your union. Get involved, join a committee, run for office, research. He said, we got these contracts that studios are signatories to. Go read the 847 pages or whatever it is. Like, there's so much that we can do as members. We have so much power that many of us have, for whatever reason, chosen not to exercise. And that encouraged me. The fact that I started this podcast a couple years ago and then picked it back up again a few months ago. And I'm so grateful that you accepted my invitation to be on here, because I think there's so much valuable information that you have uncovered for us. You're this like living resource in our union. And I'm really grateful to you, Shaan, for the hard work you've done that we all now get a benefit from, regardless of what side of the issue you come on. It's like you brought issues to the table that deserve conversation at the very least.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's an honor to have been asked. And one thing I just will say kind of as a final thing is that regardless of how any of us, including myself, might feel about a particular member leader or whatever, the union is us. It's the members. It's not our staff. It's not our elected leadership. The 162,000 performers across stunts, background performers, voiceover, dancers, broadcasters, singers and recording artists, actor performers, like all of the different work categories that we have within our union. We are the union, and we hire people, we elect certain people, but they aren't us. They all serve us. And so if you, I say in my letter too, that like, I am one of the most vocal critics of our leadership because of what I've witnessed, but I'm also one of the most devoted unionists, and I am fully committed to our community and our union to do everything that we want it to do. And so, don't confuse a few member leaders with the union itself. I love our union to pieces.
Me too. Well, hey, Shaan, can we bring you back on the podcast in the future? Because I feel like there's going to be more stuff to talk about. There already is, but
anytime, brother. You know where to find me.
Awesome. Thanks, Shaan Sharma.
Wow. I'm really grateful for Shaan Sharma. I mean, who knows if I'll ever book a commercial acting gig? Even with this podcast, I'm heading more in the direction of swag and Patreon instead of seeking advertising dollars. And as for my background acting, the writing was on the wall in the industry, even before that Deadline Hollywood article, The Expendables, Hollywood background actors face extinction in COVID-19 era. I'd love to be pleasantly surprised, but I literally do not expect to book another SAG-AFTRA acting gig for the rest of the year. So when I pay my SAG-AFTRA union dues with my stimulus check, signed by the Orange Union Buster in Chief, it will be less about my profession and more about a cause, protecting working artists. Now, Shaan, he's putting in the work, doing the heavy lifting. He's got my respect and my vote when he needs it. I dig what he does. I hope you do too. We'll have links on the episode page to his recent manifestos, as well as the Storytellers Conservatory podcast that he hosts. Really good first conversation, I'd say, with Shaan. I think we need to bring him back on the pod in the future, get some updates. Oh boy, how you guys doing? Bandwidth, right? It's amazing what you can do. You can not only listen to helicopters fly overhead. You know how much they spend, LAPD, to keep those things in the air? What are they doing? I'm just asking. Maybe I should go talk to Detective Harry Bosch. I mean, he works at Hollywood Division. So, we're back when I used to go to the ATM machine. They got one inside there. It's crazy. Yeah, remember Cash? It seems so long ago. Anyway, any links to stuff mentioned on the show, you can find at markromanempire.com. If you'd like more podcasts, support it. Our mojo may not involve much advertising in the future, so your Venmo, Cash App, or even PayPal truly helps. markromanempire.com. Click tip jar in the menu. On SoundCloud, there's a link to my Venmo there as well, which is like a Venmo,
It's a Venmo. Is that like an emu that has like electronic digital currency trading opportunities? I don't know. I don't know. I got questions too. But if your deal is you're on SoundCloud, you're digging Mark Roman Empire, also a podcast, and you want to throw my Venmo a little love, look for the blue support Mark Roman Empire button in SoundCloud. And of course, we are now on Patreon, patreon.com/Mark Roman Empire for lots of cool perks with more on the way. Hey, thanks to our listeners across the globe. And it just gets more interesting each and every passing week. I dig in this. This is awesome. I see you, Melbourne, Australia, Muscat, Oman, Novi Sad in Serbia, and not to forget here in the U.S., Corpus Christi, although that's in the great nation of Texas. So depending on who you talk to, is it Texas? Is it the United States? You know, are you a hero tier? We've been helping house Venka and Will since December 2019. We've been helping creatives since St. Patrick's Eve 2020. We need 3,000 humans to ensure housing security for Venka, Will, and their puppy, Andy. Leave no human outside. Also, only Hero Tiers can win cool prizes in the weekly Cards for Hero Tiers game. You can check it out on our YouTube channel, Mark Roman Empire on YouTube. Watch Cards for Hero Tiers number 12 on Monday and find out who wins the surprise prize during Cards for Hero Tiers. And we also tease the next episode of the podcast, which drops on Wednesdays. We've found 50 Hero Tiers since December. Who's next? Whether you need help or can offer help, or maybe you're just curious, that's cool. Visit herotier.org to discover more. And for those of you not sure how to spell Hero Tier, we take a hero, we take the end of volunteer, we put it together. HEROTEER, herotier.org. I don't know. Haven't explained that yet, so thought maybe I would. So there you go. You can listen to the podcast on many platforms. Don't forget to rate and review us on the one you're using. Whether you hear us on Apple Podcasts, Mixcloud, Podbean, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or TuneIn, or if you're using one of the many apps like CastBox and Overcast. Personally, I like to listen to my podcast on Pocket Casts. I kind of dig that. It's got some cool features. Been using it for several years. But wherever you're listening, just rate and review. On the YouTube, we have podcast audio as well as interview rap teasers with some video and Cards for Hero Tiers videos. Also, Church, Lieutenant Frank, and Cue Ball Hot Takes videos. Which reminds me, I think I owe you guys some more Lieutenant Frank videos. We'll throw those some more in the playlist, maybe even this week, sometime soon. MarkRomanEmpire.com. Click listen. And avoid missing out on cool stuff. Don't forget to join my mailing list if you haven't already. The Mark Roman Empire Census. Sometimes we have special deals and perks for podcast citizens. I got to change that. Podcast census members, because a true citizen is paying their $5 a month on Patreon. That's right. This week's Sermo Maximus is Sally Field. Check your email for this week's, for this episode census for this week. What am I saying? I don't know. I'm just saying, go to your email and look for the email from markromanempire.com. That one actually might be from mymark what is it? mymark.tv. Yeah, mymark.tv. Oh, see, this is why I need an assistant to keep track of all the details. You feel me? Anyway, check your email for this episode's census. But only do that if you want to win a cool prize to be drawn in next week's Cards for Hero Tiers. If you didn't get the census email, become a citizen, which we're going to call a census or something. Because a citizen is on Patreon. Go to markromanempire.com, click census, and one of these days, I'll upgrade my system so it'll actually make sense when I tell you about it. All right? So many changes. Oh my God, we gotta like catch up and update all this stuff. Yeah, a few weeks ago I had worse problems, so I'm not complaining. Twitter, speaking of complaining, it's what we do on that, right? Twitter, you can find me at the Mark Roman. Yeah, if Tom Cruise is following me on the Twitter, why aren't you? Instagram at Mark Roman Empire for the podcast, at Vegas 90210 for Lieutenant Frank and the other characters. Email your questions to me at romanpodmail@gmail.com. I know as of yesterday, we didn't have any. So if you sent some in the last 24 hours, we'll catch you next week. And I might answer them on the podcast. romanpodmail@gmail.com. Oh, we lost Fred Willard. He was up there. He had a good life. So it's not tragic, but it's, miss the guy. He's one of those kind of quirky comedians that wasn't completely mainstream. He had like comedy credibility for what I dug. So I'm going to miss him not being around. Yeah, he just, there's a lot of Christopher Guest works, films. I never met the guy, and I was kind of looking forward to maybe getting to meet him being in this town. So miss you, Fred Willard. And thanks for a wonderful life's work. You're definitely one of the reasons why I'm joyful to be in this biz, whatever shape or form this biz is going to take next. There's another death this week of someone I'd never met, and I'm only just starting to get to know her work. But she was a very important part of someone who is definitely been an inspiration to this podcast, and that would be Lynn Shelton. Passed away. She was a very noted filmmaker out of Seattle. Did a lot of cool stuff. Also directed some episodes of Mark Maron's show back in the day, Maron, and they met. And this last year, I gather Mark and Lynn have enjoyed being boyfriend, girlfriend of a certain age, also collaborators, partners. And as a listener of Mark Maron's What the Fuck podcast, which this podcast definitely takes a lot of inspiration from, I've been listening to it for a decade now. So I've listened to Mark share about a few different girlfriends, a few different types of girlfriends. And also being single. So it's amazing to see the progression over the decade. So if you haven't, you can listen to Mark's episode, his tribute to Lynn. And I got to tell you, that was rough to listen to. But I'm really happy. I've yet to meet Mark Maron. I've actually done a character that's been asked about and discussed on a Comedy Central show while Mark Maron is waiting for the topic to move to something he could relate to. But I've never met the man. Been a big fan of his podcast, big fan of other things he does. His most recent comedy special, if you haven't seen it on Netflix, is amazing. The timing, but my heart goes out to Mr. Mark Maron. But I'm grateful to hear that apparently he's got a wonderful support network, especially from all of the friends, family, and fans of the supremely talented Lynn Shelton. And it's wonderful to see someone be able to, two people, to be able to enjoy something so fleeting and seemingly impossible to some of us. But I'm really happy for both of them. I'm really sad that Lynn's life was cut short so tragically, apparently due to some underlying, previously undiagnosed health condition. Oh, there we are again. Yeah. Why do we need universal health care? Well, better health care. Because Lynn Shelton didn't need to go. That was a... I feel for you, Mark. I feel for you. Well, not to leave on a sad note, guys, but, I do that every week because there's also been a few buskers that we've lost. And I'd like to remind you about them because we don't really pay that much attention to the buskers in our world and the importance that they are in our lives. I know a lot of you have shown me in the last few weeks the importance of Lieutenant Frank in your lives, and I really appreciate your support and your gratitude and your, you're helping me when I needed the help. But I'd still ask you to remember our fallen buskers because it takes a busker, and we've lost a few. We lost Clanelyn Monroe. We lost Prince St. Paul. Christopher Dennis, also known as Hollywood Superman. And Alexander Desser, most recently. And this was right before the pandemic started. I'm still trying to process the sudden loss of him. Again, healthcare. He had a stroke. Was it related to COVID? I don't know. He did have some underlying health conditions. Had he had better health care, I think he'd still be with us today. And all the kids of all ages that came and enjoyed his Hollywood Iron Man and his spitting image of Robert Downey Jr. It's a loss. It's a tragic loss. And we lost all four of them. And I don't want us to forget them. Just the way Mark Maron's never going to forget Lynn Shelton, just as all of Lynn's fans are never going to forget her and friends and family, just as many of us will never forget Fred Willard. I'd like to, if I'm the only one, to say, hey, Clanelyn Monroe, Prince St. Paul, Christopher Dennis, and Alexander Desser, they were all performers on the street, and they brought joy and laughter to literally thousands of people, not more. So I say, no fear. Hero tier. I am the Mark Roman, and like Michael Phelps, I am mentally ill. How can I help?